Most people think these reactions mean something is wrong with them. They don't. A lot of the strangest things the brain does, freezing, going numb, misreading danger, shutting down, are not mistakes. They're survival responses that evolved to keep you alive. If you've ever reacted in a way you couldn't explain during stress or danger, this video is for you. If you enjoy long, thoughtful videos like this, like and subscribe to our channel Restwise. These take a lot of time to make, and your support really helps the channel. Before we begin, comment what time it is for you and where you're watching from. It's interesting knowing this is being watched around the world at different moments. Time slowing down during life-threatening moments. There is a moment some people describe where the world suddenly feels thicker, heavier, almost stretched like warm taffy. A car swerves into your lane, a body lunges at you. A fall begins before your feet realize they have lost the ground, and somehow, inside that split second, you notice everything. The sound sharpens, collars pop, thoughts line up in perfect order. It feels like time itself just took a deep breath and slowed down for you. Here is the strange part. Your brain did not break. It did not glitch. It did exactly what it was built to do. When people talk about time slowing down during danger, it sounds mystical, like a superpower or some cinematic trick the mind plays when it panics. But the shock is that nothing actually slowed down outside of you. Cars still moved at the same speed. Gravity did not negotiate. What changed was the way your brain processed reality. It flipped into a different mode, one that prioritizes survival over everything else you think matters. In a life-threatening moment, your brain slams the accelerator on attention. The amygdala, the threat detection system buried deep in your head, fires instantly. It does not ask questions. It does not wait for confirmation. It sends an emergency broadcast through your nervous system. Adrenaline floods your body. Norepinephrine surges through your brain. And suddenly, your perception narrows and sharpens at the same time. This chemical cocktail does something wild. It increases the rate at which your brain takes in information. Not intelligence, not wisdom. Raw sensory data, more frames per second, more detail packed into the same slice of time. When your brain records more information in a moment, that moment feels longer when you experience it. That is the part most people never hear. Time does not slow down in real time. It stretches in your perception because your brain is recording more memory per second. Later, when you look back on it, the memory feels long and expanded. In the moment, it feels like you have time to think, react, even choose. This is why people report things like seeing individual glass shards float through the air during a crash, or hearing their own thoughts calmly narrate what to do while their body moves on instinct, or noticing tiny details like the texture of the road or the expression on a face, even though everything happened in less than a second. That experience is not poetic exaggeration. It is your brain entering a survival state where efficiency matters more than comfort. The normal filters that keep life smooth and automatic drop away. Your brain stops wasting energy on background noise. It cuts out irrelevant thoughts. It becomes brutally present. And here is the validating part. If you have ever felt this and wondered if something was wrong with you, there is not. This response is ancient. Long before modern threats, this same mechanism helped humans dodge falling branches, charging animals, and sudden attacks. Those who could process more information in a moment were more likely to survive it. That wiring stayed. Even the calm you might feel during these moments has an explanation. The brain often pairs adrenaline with a strange clarity. Panic is inefficient. Freezing in terror gets you killed, so the brain sometimes dampens emotional overwhelm and replaces it with focus. That calm is not courage, it is chemistry. After the danger passes, the crash hits, shaking, exhaustion, emotional release. That is your nervous system powering back down. But during the threat, your brain gave you access to a version of yourself built purely for survival. What makes this even more unsettling is that you cannot summon this state on command. It does not respond to motivation or desire. It only activates when the brain believes survival is genuinely at stake. That belief does not come from logic. It comes from instinct. The tease hidden inside this is that time distortion is just one of many ways your brain bends reality to keep you alive. If it can stretch moments, sharpen perception, and rewrite your experience of time itself, imagine what else it quietly changes without you ever noticing. Sudden emotional numbness after extreme shock. Sometimes the most unsettling part of a traumatic moment is not the fear. It is the absence of it. Something devastating happens, and instead of breaking down, instead of crying or panicking, you feel nothing. No sadness, no anger, just a strange, hollow calm. People around you might be screaming or collapsing, and you are standing there thinking, why do I feel blank right now? That emptiness can feel wrong, almost inhuman. And that is where the shock really lands. Because we are taught that pain should hurt immediately. That loss should come with tears. That danger should feel terrifying. So when your emotions shut off instead, it feels like something inside you snapped. But it did not. What actually happened is that your brain pulled an emergency lever most people do not know exists. When shock hits at a level that could overwhelm you, your nervous system sometimes chooses numbness over chaos. It is not apathy. It is not weakness. It is containment. In extreme situations, your brain has to make a brutal calculation. If you fully feel everything right now, will that help you survive this moment? If the answer is no, it shuts the door on emotion temporarily. This is driven by the same survival systems that control fight, flight, or freeze. Emotional numbness is closely tied to freeze, a state where the body conserves energy and the mind disconnects from pain to prevent overload. On a chemical level, this involves a flood of endogenous opioids. These are natural painkillers produced by your brain. They dull physical pain, yes, but they also blunt emotional pain. At the same time, stress hormones like cortisol spike, which suppress emotional processing in higher brain regions. The result is a muted internal world. You are still conscious. You are still functioning. But the feelings are wrapped in thick insulation. This is why people can walk away from car accidents feeling oddly calm, only to fall apart hours or days later, or why someone can receive devastating news and immediately start handling logistics with eerie composure. The brain is prioritizing function over feeling. You cannot fall apart yet. You might need to make decisions. You might need to get to safety. You might need to survive the next 10 minutes. Here is the part that needs validating. Emotional numbness after shock does not mean you do not care. In fact, it often happens because you care too much. The brain recognizes that the emotional weight of what just happened could crush you if it all arrived at once. So it parcels it out. It delays it. It buys you time. This is why forcing yourself to feel something in that moment usually does not work. You cannot argue your way out of a survival response. The numbness is not a choice. It is automatic. And when people shame themselves for it, they are judging a reflex designed to keep them intact. The feelings do not disappear. They are stored. And when your brain decides the environment is safer, when the threat has passed, and you have enough internal resources, the numbness lifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. That delayed wave of emotion can be intense, confusing, even frightening. People often ask, why am I reacting now when I was fine before? You were not fine before. You were protected. This mechanism has deep evolutionary roots. Animals display similar responses. Prey animals often go limp or dissociate when caught. It reduces suffering and increases the chance of survival if escape becomes possible. Humans carry a more complex version of this. Instead of going fully unconscious, we detach emotionally while staying mentally present. The danger comes when people misinterpret this response as a permanent state or a personal flaw. Numbness that persists long after the event can signal that the nervous system never fully exited survival mode. That is not failure. It is a system stuck in protection, and systems stuck in protection need safety, not pressure. The unsettling truth is that your brain is willing to temporarily shut down your emotional world to keep you alive. That means your sense of self, your values, your feelings are negotiable under threat. Survival comes first. Identity comes later. And if your brain can silence emotions entirely when it believes it is necessary, that raises a deeper question. How many other parts of your inner experience are being quietly adjusted every day without you realizing it, all in the name of keeping you alive? Laughing or smiling during intense fear or stress, it can happen at the worst possible moment. Your heart is racing, your hands are shaking. Something is clearly wrong, and instead of screaming or freezing, you laugh. Or you smile. Sometimes it slips out quietly, sometimes it bursts out loud and uncontrollable, and immediately a second emotion hits you. Shame. Confusion. Why would my body do that right now? That reaction feels disturbing because it violates the rules we think emotions are supposed to follow. Fear is supposed to look like fear. Stress is supposed to look serious. So when your face does the opposite, it feels like a betrayal, like your body exposed something inappropriate or broken. The shock is that this reaction is not a mistake, it is not immaturity, it is not disrespect. It is your brain trying to keep you alive by dumping pressure before it overloads you. When fear spikes too fast, the nervous system can overshoot. The arousal level becomes so intense that staying locked in terror would paralyze you. Your brain does not want that. Paralysis equals danger. So it sometimes pulls a pressure release valve, and one of the fastest ways to release nervous energy is through laughter or smiling. This response sits at the intersection of fear and relief. Even when there is no real relief yet, laughter triggers the release of dopamine and endorphins, chemicals that slightly counteract stress hormones. It also changes breathing patterns, forcing deeper exhales that calm the vagus nerve. In simple terms, Laughing interrupts panic before it fully takes over. This is why people laugh on roller coasters, during near accidents, or when being confronted. The body is flooded with adrenaline and needs a fast outlet. Crying is slower. Shaking takes time. Laughter is instant. What makes this unsettling is that the brain does not care how this looks socially. It only cares that your nervous system stays functional. Smiling can also play a role here. A smile, even a forced one, sends feedback signals to the brain that reduce perceived threat slightly. It is a form of self-regulation happening below awareness. There is also a social survival layer to this. Humans evolved in groups. Showing pure terror can escalate danger, especially in confrontations. A nervous smile or awkward laugh can signal submission, non-threat, or uncertainty. In some situations, that reduces the likelihood of aggression from others. Your brain learned long ago that softening your expression could keep you safer than showing fear outright. Here is the validating truth. If you have ever laughed during a traumatic moment and hated yourself for it, that reaction does not reflect your values or intentions. It reflects your nervous system scrambling to keep you from collapsing. People laugh while being arrested, while receiving devastating news, even during medical emergencies. Not because it is funny, because their system is overloaded. This is also why the laughter often feels wrong even as it happens. There is no joy in it. It feels brittle, sharp, almost mechanical. That is because it is not an emotional laugh. It is a physiological one. The body moving energy out as fast as it can. The brain regions involved in this response bypass conscious control. The prefrontal cortex, the part that manages social appropriateness, gets partially suppressed under extreme stress. That leaves older neural circuits in charge. Those circuits are not concerned with dignity. They are concerned with survival. After the moment passes, people often replay it over and over. Why did I smile? Why did I laugh? What does that say about me? But asking that question assumes the reaction was a choice. It was not. It was reflexive, automatic, and protective. In some cases, this response appears alongside dissociation. The laughter creates distance from what is happening. It puts a thin layer of unreality between you and the fear. That distance can be the difference between functioning and breaking down. What is rarely talked about is how exhausting this can be afterward. Once the nervous system settles, the body realizes how close it came to overload. That is when the crash comes. Guilt, tears, shaking, emotional release. The laughter was never the real reaction. It was the buffer. This survival mechanism becomes even more confusing when it shows up repeatedly. People worry they are inappropriate or emotionally broken. In reality, it often means their nervous system learned early on that laughter kept things from getting worse. It became a default tool. The unsettling tease here is that your emotional expressions are not always expressions of how you feel. Sometimes they are tools your brain uses to manage threat. And if your brain is willing to flip fear into laughter when things get intense, it makes you wonder how many of you dissociation when experiencing unbearable danger. There is a moment in extreme danger where everything suddenly feels far away. Your body is there, but you are not fully inside it. Sounds become muffled, vision narrows or blurs. Time feels strange, but different from slowing down. It is more like you stepped a few feet back from reality and are watching yourself move through it. People describe it as floating, fading, going numb, or feeling unreal. And the scariest part is often the thought, am I losing my mind right now? That feeling hits hard because it feels like the opposite of what you should do in danger. You should be alert. focused, fully present. Instead, your awareness slips sideways. You feel detached from pain, fear, even your own identity. The shock is realizing that your brain chose to disconnect you from the experience instead of pulling you deeper into it. That choice is not random. When danger becomes unbearable, not just scary but overwhelming, the brain has one last survival option left. If it cannot fight, if it cannot flee, if freezing will not be enough, it dissociates. This is the nervous system saying, "This is too much to feel all at once, so we are going to reduce how much you experience." Dissociation is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is containment at the highest level. Under extreme threat, stress hormones flood the system so intensely that normal emotional processing would cause collapse. Panic at that level can shut down decision-making, coordination, even consciousness. So the brain pulls awareness away from sensation and emotion. Pain signals get muted. Emotional centers go quiet, consciousness narrows. You are still operating, but from a distance. This is why people can endure things in the moment that seem impossible later. Severe injuries, violent situations, life-threatening events. They function, speak, move, sometimes even calmly, while feeling unreal. The brain creates a buffer between you and the full impact of what is happening. On a neurological level, this involves reduced activity in areas responsible for self-awareness and emotional integration, while survival circuits remain active. Your body keeps going. Your mind steps back. That separation is dissociation. Here is the part that needs validating. If you have ever dissociated during danger and felt ashamed or confused afterward, nothing about that response means you were weak or absent. It means your brain did exactly what it was designed to do when all other options failed. Dissociation keeps you from being psychologically shattered in the moment. This response is ancient. Animals display it too. When escape is impossible, many species enter a detached state. It reduces suffering and increases survival odds. Humans carry a more complex version. We stay functional while disconnecting internally. What makes dissociation so disturbing afterward is how alien it feels. People say things like, "It did not feel like me. I felt like I was watching a movie. I did not feel pain until later." That is because your sense of self is not fixed. Under threat, it becomes flexible. The brain is willing to temporarily loosen your identity to keep the organism alive. And here is something most people do not realize. Dissociation is not always dramatic. It can be subtle. Feeling numb. Feeling far away. Feeling like your emotions are wrapped in glass. Those are smaller versions of the same mechanism. The danger comes when people interpret dissociation as permanent damage. In most cases, it is temporary. It lifts when the brain believes you are safe again. But safety is not just physical, it is internal. If the nervous system stays on high alert, dissociation can linger. Not because something broke, but because the brain has not received the signal that it is okay to reconnect. This is why forcing yourself to snap out of it rarely works. Dissociation is not a choice. It is a reflex. The system needs calm, grounding, and time to reintegrate. Pressure makes it dig in deeper. What is unsettling is realizing how easily your conscious experience can be altered. The sense of being you feels solid until it is not. Under enough threat, your brain will trade presence for protection without asking permission. The tease hidden here is that dissociation is just one example of how your brain can radically reshape reality to keep you alive. If it can distance you from pain, emotion, and even yourself in moments of unbearable danger, it raises a quiet question. How much of what you experience as reality is fixed, and how much of it is being adjusted moment by a brain whose primary job is not truth, but survival. Tunnel vision in high-risk situations. It does not arrive politely. 1 second you are aware of the room, the noise, the people, the background details. The next second, all of that collapses, your vision narrows, the edges fade. Everything outside one specific point feels irrelevant or invisible. It is like the world suddenly shrinks to a single target, a single threat, a single task, and afterward, people tell you things that happened right next to you that you swear you never saw. That moment is unsettling because it feels like your awareness failed you, like your brain dropped information at the worst possible time. But the shock is this: tunnel vision is not a malfunction. It is a deliberate survival strategy. In high-risk situations, your brain has to make decisions faster than conscious thought can manage. There is no time to scan everything. There is no time to consider multiple possibilities. So the brain chooses focus over accuracy. It narrows your field of attention to whatever it believes matters most for survival in that moment. This happens almost instantly. The sympathetic nervous system activates. Adrenaline surges. Blood flow is redirected away from non-essential systems and toward muscles, and the brain areas responsible for action. At the same time, the visual system changes how it processes information. Peripheral vision becomes less important. Central vision takes priority. From the outside, this looks like missing obvious things. From the inside, it feels like extreme clarity. That is the paradox. People often report that during tunnel vision, they felt incredibly focused, like nothing else existed, like distractions disappeared. That is because they did. The brain actively suppresses peripheral input to reduce cognitive load. More information would slow you down. Less information keeps you alive. This response has deep evolutionary roots. Early humans facing predators or sudden threats did not benefit from noticing the scenery. They benefited from locking onto the threat or the escape path and acting immediately. Tunnel vision increased reaction speed, accuracy of movement, and chances of survival. The validating part is this: if you have ever been in danger and later felt embarrassed or confused about what you failed to notice, that does not mean you were careless. It means your brain decided that noticing those things was unnecessary or dangerous in that moment. This is why eyewitness accounts during high-stress events are often incomplete or conflicting. People are not lying. Their brains were filtering reality differently. Under threat, perception is not objective. It is optimized. Tunnel vision also affects attention beyond sight. Auditory tunnel vision can happen too. People report not hearing screams, alarms, or even their own voice. The brain dampens competing sensory channels to protect focus. This is called perceptual narrowing, and it is a core feature of survival mode. What makes this even more disturbing is that tunnel vision does not ask for your permission. You do not choose what it locks onto. The brain chooses based on instinct, past experience, and perceived threat. That choice can save you, or it can cause you to miss critical information. But in the moment, the brain values speed over completeness. There is also an emotional layer. Tunnel vision reduces emotional overwhelm. When everything narrows, fear becomes more manageable. You are not processing the full scope of danger. You are processing one solvable problem. That containment helps prevent panic from taking over. After the event, when the nervous system calms down, awareness expands again, and that is when the confusion hits. Why did I not see that? How did I miss something so obvious? That questioning happens because your brain has returned to normal processing and assumes it was always operating that way. It was not. Here is something most people never consider. Tunnel vision can linger. In people who experience repeated stress or trauma, the brain can become biased toward narrowing focus, even when the threat is not immediate. This can show up as hyperfocus, difficulty seeing the bigger picture, or feeling mentally stuck. Again, not because the brain is broken, but because it learned that narrowing kept you safe. The unsettling truth is that your experience of reality is negotiable under pressure. You think you are seeing everything, but you are seeing what your brain allows. And what it allows is shaped by survival priorities, not truth or completeness. This is why training matters in high-risk professions. Pilots, surgeons, first responders train to widen awareness under stress because the default response is narrowing. They are not fighting fear. They are fighting biology. The tease hidden in tunnel vision is realizing how much of your awareness is curated. If your brain can collapse the world down to a single point in moments of danger, then your everyday perception is also a filtered version of reality. You are always seeing what your brain thinks matters most. Tunnel vision just reveals that filter in its most extreme form, when survival takes control and everything else disappears. Freezing instead of fighting or fleeing. It starts with a strange stillness, not calm, not peace, just an inability to move. Your mind is aware something is wrong, your heart is pounding, adrenaline is rushing through you, and yet your body does nothing. You want to run, you want to react, you want to do something, but you cannot. Muscles feel locked. Words disappear. Time stretches in an uncomfortable way. And later, the question haunts you. Why did I just freeze? That question carries a lot of shame. People imagine survival as action. Fighting back. Running fast. Doing something heroic. Freezing feels like failure. Like betrayal by your own body. The shock comes when you realize freezing is not the absence of a survival response. It is one of the oldest and most powerful ones you have. When danger hits, the brain does not choose between fight or flight alone. There is a third option wired just as deeply. Freeze. It activates when the brain decides that movement could make things worse. When drawing attention might increase risk. When waiting might keep you alive longer than acting. This decision happens faster than thought. The amygdala detects threat and signals the nervous system. Adrenaline still releases. Your heart still races. But instead of sending energy into motion, the brain locks the body in place. Muscles tense but do not move. Breathing becomes shallow. The system is primed but paused. This is not indecision, it is strategy. In nature, freezing reduces detection. Predators are drawn to movement. Stillness can mean invisibility. Even when invisibility is impossible, freezing can buy time. Time to assess. Time to wait for an opening. Time for the threat to pass. The brain learned long ago that motion is not always the safest response. Here is what makes freezing so confusing from the inside. It feels like paralysis, like your body ignored your intentions. That is because conscious control has been temporarily overridden. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that plans and chooses, goes offline under extreme stress. Older survival circuits take over. They do not ask what you want. They do what they think will keep you alive. This is why people freeze during assaults, accidents, confrontations, or sudden emergencies. They are not weak. They are not passive. Their nervous system made a split-second calculation that action could increase danger. The validating truth is this. Freezing often happens in situations where fighting would fail and fleeing is impossible. Your brain chooses the option with the highest survival odds, even if it looks wrong afterward. There is also a chemical component that explains why freezing feels so intense. Alongside adrenaline, the brain releases opioids and stress hormones that dampen pain and emotion. This creates a numb, detached state. Movement feels distant. Speech feels inaccessible. You are there, but not fully in control. Many people judge themselves harshly after freezing because they imagine they could have done more. That judgment comes from hindsight, not from the reality of the moment. The brain did not have the luxury of reflection. It had milliseconds. What makes freezing even harder to accept is that it does not feel brave. There is no sense of agency or power, but survival responses are not about bravery. They are about probability, and freezing has kept countless organisms alive across evolution. Animals freeze all the time. Deer lock up when headlights hit them. Rabbits go still when they sense danger. In many cases it works. Humans carry the same circuitry. We just layer shame and meaning on top of it. Another important piece is that freezing can coexist with awareness. People often remember everything while being unable to act. That memory makes the experience feel worse. You remember wanting to move and not being able to. But that does not mean your body failed. It means your body chose stillness as protection. After the threat passes, the nervous system releases the freeze. That release can look like shaking, crying, rage, or collapse. That is energy finally moving through. People sometimes mistake this delayed reaction as weakness. It is the completion of the survival cycle. Freezing becomes problematic only when the system gets stuck there. Repeated trauma can train the nervous system to default to freeze even when movement would be safe. That is not a character flaw. It is a system that learned stillness equals survival and has not yet learned otherwise. The unsettling realization is that your sense of control is conditional. Under enough threat, your brain will take over your body without consulting you. It will choose stillness over action if it believes that is safer, and it will do it instantly. The tease hidden inside freezing is this: if your brain can lock your body in place against your will to protect you, what else is it deciding for you every day without your awareness? How many reactions you judge yourself for are not choices at all, but survival strategies running quietly beneath the surface, doing whatever it takes to keep you alive. The urge to hide rather than escape during threats, it does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet and almost embarrassing. Instead of running, instead of confronting the threat, your body pulls you inward. You look for corners, shadows, bathrooms, cars, closets, anywhere small and closed, out of sight. And afterward, you might wonder why your instinct was to disappear instead of get away. That instinct can feel cowardly when you replay it later. Movies teach us that survival means escape. Distance equals safety. Movement equals control. So when your body chooses hiding, it feels like the wrong answer. The shock is realizing that hiding is not a failure of courage. It is a survival strategy older than running. When the brain detects danger, it does not ask a single question. It asks many very fast. Can I fight this? Can I outrun it? Will movement draw attention? Is there a place where I can reduce my visibility? If escape feels uncertain or likely to make things worse, the brain often shifts to concealment. This decision happens before conscious thought. The amygdala scans for threat and immediately begins mapping options based on past experience and environmental cues. If the brain senses that fleeing could escalate danger, make noise, or increase exposure, it redirects the body toward hiding. Hiding reduces variables. When you are concealed, fewer things can reach you. Fewer eyes can see you. Fewer directions require monitoring. Your nervous system is trying to shrink the world down to something manageable. On a biological level, hiding pairs with a specific nervous system state. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, but movement is controlled and minimal. Breathing becomes quieter. The body lowers its profile. This is not panic. It is strategic restraint. In nature, hiding is often more effective than escape. Many predators are triggered by motion. Stillness and concealment reduce detection. Early humans survived not just by running, but by blending into terrain, staying silent, and waiting until danger passed. That wiring never left. The validating truth is this: if your instinct was to hide during a threat, your brain likely believed escape would increase risk. That belief may not always be accurate, but it is never random. It is shaped by prior experiences, perceived power imbalance, and the immediate environment. This is especially common in situations involving unpredictable human threats. Loud movement can attract attention. Running can provoke pursuit. Hiding can reduce engagement entirely. The brain learns this quickly. What makes this response so confusing afterward is that it feels passive, like nothing was done. But hiding is not inaction. It is a calculated reduction of exposure. Your body is conserving energy, minimizing detection, and waiting for a safer window. There is also an emotional layer to hiding. When you conceal yourself, your nervous system experiences a small sense of containment. Walls, doors, tight spaces provide boundaries. Boundaries create the illusion of control when the external world feels dangerous. That illusion can be enough to prevent panic from overwhelming you. People often judge themselves harshly for hiding because it clashes with how they wish they had acted. But that judgment comes from a calm brain looking backward. In the moment, your brain was not aiming for heroism. It was aiming for survival. Another important piece is that hiding often accompanies freeze and dissociation. The body may move to concealment and then go still. That stillness is not resignation. It is vigilance without motion. Your senses remain alert. You are listening, waiting, monitoring. After the threat passes, many people feel a rush of shame or confusion. Why did I not run? Why did I not leave? But those questions assume escape was clearly available. Your nervous system did not see it that way. This response becomes even more common in people who have learned that escape did not help in the past. If running once made things worse, the brain updates its playbook. Next time, it chooses hiding faster. That is learning, not weakness. The unsettling part is realizing how little say you have in this process. You do not choose hiding consciously. Your body moves before you finish the thought. You find yourself tucked away before you fully understand why. Hiding can also linger beyond immediate danger. Some people notice the urge to withdraw, isolate, or make themselves smaller during stress, even when there is no direct threat. That is the same survival mechanism extending into daily life. The brain learned that reducing visibility equals safety. The key thing to understand is that your brain does not measure danger the way logic does. It measures it in risk, probability, and past outcomes. If hiding once kept you safe, it becomes a favored option. The quiet tease inside this response is realizing that disappearance can feel safer than distance. Your brain sometimes believes that being unseen is better than being far away. And if your nervous system can choose invisibility over escape in moments of threat, it raises a deeper question. How often do you make yourself smaller, quieter, or less visible in everyday life, not because you want to, but because some ancient part of your brain still believes that hiding is how you survive? Heightened hearing during moments of danger. It often starts with a sound, not a big one, something small, a footstep that feels too close, a breath you did not expect to hear, a click, a rustle, a shift in the air. Suddenly your ears feel wide open, like they are reaching outward. You hear things you swear were not there before. Every noise feels sharp, urgent, meaningful. And for a moment, it feels like sound itself is guiding you. That experience can be unsettling because it feels unnatural, like your senses turned up too high. People describe it as hearing in high definition. Sounds feel closer, louder, more important. Even silence feels loud. And afterward, you might wonder how your hearing could change so dramatically in an instant. The shock is realizing that nothing changed in the world around you. What changed was how your brain decided to listen. In moments of danger, your brain rapidly reallocates sensory priority. Vision often narrows, but hearing expands. This is not an accident. Sound travels in all directions. It reaches you even when you are not looking. In uncertain or threatening environments, hearing becomes one of the fastest ways to detect movement, intent, and proximity. When the brain senses danger, stress hormones surge through your system. Adrenaline does not just prepare muscles, it heightens sensory processing. In the auditory cortex, the brain amplifies incoming signals and suppresses background filtering. Normally, your brain ignores a massive amount of sound to keep you sane. In danger, it stops ignoring. This is why tiny noises suddenly feel enormous. Your brain is no longer asking, "Is this relevant to my comfort?" It is asking, "Could this affect my survival?" There is also a timing component. Hearing processes faster than vision in many situations. You can hear something before you can see it. That early warning matters. A snapped twig, a door creaking, a change in breathing behind you. These sounds carry information about distance, direction, and intention. In survival mode, your brain treats them like data. The validating part is this. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by sound during stress and thought you were overreacting, you were not. Your nervous system was doing exactly what it evolved to do. Heightened hearing is not anxiety inventing threats. It is your brain widening its detection net. This is why people in danger often report hearing their own heartbeat, their breath, even blood rushing in their ears. Internal sounds become louder too. The brain increases overall auditory gain. Everything gets amplified because anything could matter. What makes this response emotionally intense is that sound bypasses logic. You cannot reason your way out of a noise. A sudden sound triggers reflexes before thought. That immediacy is useful in danger. It is also exhausting. There is a deeper mechanism at play here involving attention. Under threat, the brain reduces cognitive distractions. Internal dialogue quiets. Daydreaming stops. That mental silence creates space for sensory input. Sounds stand out more because there is less noise inside your head competing with them. People often say things like "I could hear everything," or "it felt like my ears were searching the room." That is not imagination. The brain actively scans auditory space when visual certainty is low. Sound becomes your radar. This response also connects to why certain noises feel intolerable during stress. Sudden loud sounds can feel physically painful. Repetitive noises can feel maddening. The brain is already on high alert. Extra sound becomes overload. That does not mean you are sensitive or dramatic. It means your system is already working at full capacity. After the danger passes, hearing usually returns to baseline. But the memory of that heightened state can linger. People remember exactly what they heard. The crack in a voice, the slam of a door, the tone of footsteps. Sound often anchors traumatic memory because it was processed so intensely. Here is something rarely talked about. Heightened hearing can persist in people who have experienced repeated threats. The brain learns that sound equals early warning, so it stays vigilant. Background noises become harder to ignore. Silence feels uncomfortable. This is not because something is wrong with you. It is because your brain learned that listening closely kept you safe. The unsettling realization is that your senses are not fixed. They are adjustable. Your brain turns the volume up or down based on perceived risk. What you hear is not just about your ears. It is about what your brain thinks you need to survive. This also explains why calming environments reduce sensory overwhelm. Safety allows the brain to resume filtering. The world does not actually get quieter. Your brain just stops treating every sound like a potential threat. The tease hidden inside heightened hearing is understanding that your perception is constantly being shaped by invisible calculations. Your brain decides how much of the world you are allowed to sense based on danger. If it can sharpen sound to protect you in moments of threat, it makes you wonder how often your everyday experience is being subtly adjusted without you noticing. How much you hear, how much you miss, and how much of pain suppression during severe injuries. Some people walk away from injuries that should have dropped them instantly. They keep moving, talking, making decisions. A bone is broken. Skin is torn. Blood is everywhere. And yet, there is little to no pain. Sometimes none at all. Then later, when everything is over, the pain hits so hard it feels unreal. That delay is disturbing because it breaks the rule we assume pain always follows damage. The shock is this: pain is not automatic, it is permission-based. In life-threatening situations, pain can be dangerous. It slows you down. It steals focus. It forces your attention inward when you might need every ounce of awareness pointed outward. So when your brain senses that survival is still uncertain, it can temporarily shut pain off. This happens through a powerful internal system most people never think about. The moment extreme stress hits, your brain releases endogenous opioids. These are natural painkillers, chemically similar to morphine, made inside your own body. They block pain signals before they reach conscious awareness. At the same time, adrenaline surges, increasing strength, focus, and drive. The result is a strange state where the body is injured, but the mind feels clear and capable. You can run on a shattered ankle, lift weight with torn muscle, speak calmly while bleeding. This is not toughness. It is not denial. It is your nervous system overriding pain because pain would interfere with survival. This is why people often say things like, "I did not feel it until later," or "I knew I was hurt, but it did not hurt yet." That is not exaggeration. That is biology buying time. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt confused or guilty about not reacting to an injury right away, nothing about that response means you were careless or disconnected. Your brain delayed pain because it believed you were not safe enough to feel it yet. Once the threat passes, the system powers down. Opioid levels drop. Adrenaline fades. Blood flow normalizes. And suddenly, pain floods in, often all at once. That crash can feel brutal, even shocking. It can make people think the injury suddenly got worse. In reality, the pain was always there. It was just being blocked. This delayed pain can also feel more intense than expected. That is because your brain held the door shut. When it opens, everything rushes through at full force. There is also a psychological shift. During danger, awareness narrows and stays external. Once safety returns, attention turns inward. Sensations get louder because there is finally space for them. People sometimes judge themselves for continuing to function while injured. They think it means they did not take the injury seriously. But seriousness is not measured by pain. Pain is a signal, and signals are adjustable. This survival mechanism is ancient. Early humans who collapsed from pain the moment they were injured did not survive long. Those who could suppress pain long enough to reach safety did. That wiring stayed. The unsettling realization is that pain is negotiable. You feel it when your brain decides it is useful, not when damage happens. If your brain can silence pain while your body is injured to keep you alive, it forces a deeper question. How many other sensations you trust as absolute are actually being adjusted moment by a brain whose first priority is not comfort, but survival? Instinctive distrust of unfamiliar faces. You can feel it before you think it. A tightening in your chest. A subtle pull back. Someone new walks into your space and nothing about them is obviously wrong. Yet something inside you whispers, "Be careful." You might even smile, nod, act polite, while another part of you quietly stays alert. That reaction can feel uncomfortable, even shameful, especially if you pride yourself on being open-minded. The shock is realizing that this instinct is not about prejudice or judgment in the way we usually think about it. It is older than language, older than culture. Your brain is not evaluating who the person is, it is evaluating uncertainty. From a survival perspective, unfamiliarity equals unknown risk. For most of human history, unknown humans were one of the biggest threats you could face. Strangers could carry disease, compete for resources, or cause harm. Your brain learned that familiarity often meant safety and unfamiliarity required caution. This calculation happens fast. The amygdala scans faces in milliseconds, looking for patterns it recognizes: symmetry, expression, movement. Familiar features calm the system. Unfamiliar ones keep it alert. This does not mean danger is present. It means danger has not been ruled out yet. That distinction matters. Instinctive distrust is not fear, it is vigilance. Your nervous system is simply delaying full trust until more information comes in. Voice tone, body language, behavior over time. As data accumulates, the brain either relaxes or tightens its guard. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt uneasy around someone without knowing why, that does not automatically make you irrational or unkind. It means your brain is doing risk assessment, not moral evaluation. You can acknowledge the feeling without obeying it blindly. What makes this response confusing is that it can clash with your values. You might believe in fairness, openness, and connection while your body stays guarded. That internal conflict can create guilt. But instincts do not reflect beliefs. They reflect probability models built from millions of years of survival pressure. There is also a safety function here that often goes unnoticed. This instinct slows you down. It keeps you from oversharing. It encourages observation before attachment. In a dangerous world, immediate trust was costly. Over time, positive interaction rewires this response. Familiarity reduces threat. Repeated neutral or positive exposure teaches the brain that this person is safe. That is why distrust can fade quickly once someone becomes known. Problems arise when the system gets stuck. Trauma, chronic stress, or past betrayal can cause the brain to label unfamiliarity as danger too easily. That does not mean the instinct is wrong. It means it has become overly protective. The unsettling realization is that trust is not the default setting. Caution is. Trust is something the brain allows after enough evidence. If your nervous system can quietly warn you around unfamiliar faces without your permission, it raises a deeper question. How many of your first impressions are not conscious opinions at all, but survival signals asking you to slow down, watch closely, and stay alive long enough to decide? Gut feelings that trigger instant avoidance. It happens fast. Too fast to explain. You are about to step into something, talk to someone, take a route, say yes to a situation, and suddenly your body pulls back. A tight feeling in your stomach. A drop in your chest. A quiet internal no that does not come with words. You might even feel silly for it, because logically nothing is wrong. Yet something in you insists on avoiding it. The shock is realizing that this reaction is not random anxiety. It is not imagination. It is information arriving before conscious thought. What we call a gut feeling is your brain making a rapid survival calculation using patterns you are not aware of. Long before your rational mind weighs pros and cons, your nervous system is scanning for risk, tone changes, micro expressions, environmental details, inconsistencies, familiar danger patterns from past experiences. All of that data gets processed outside conscious awareness. When the brain detects a match to threat, even a partial one, it sends a signal to avoid, not panic, not fear, just distance. This happens through the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain in your gut, which is tightly connected to emotional and threat processing centers. That is why the sensation feels physical. Your body reacts before your thoughts catch up. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Early humans did not have time to analyze danger logically. Hesitation could mean death. Those who listened to subtle internal warnings survived more often than those who demanded proof. The validating truth is this: if you have ever avoided something without being able to explain why, that does not mean you were irrational. It means your brain recognized a risk pattern before you consciously identified it. This does not mean gut feelings are always right. They are predictions, not prophecies. They are shaped by past experiences, including trauma. But they are never meaningless. Even false alarms are attempts at protection. What makes gut avoidance so confusing is that it often clashes with social pressure and logic. You might tell yourself you are overthinking. You might override it to be polite, brave, or reasonable. Sometimes that works out. Sometimes it does not. Your nervous system does not care about politeness. It cares about survival probability. Gut feelings also tend to be quiet. They do not scream. They nudge. They create discomfort rather than terror. That subtlety is why people ignore them. But subtle does not mean weak. It means early. In people who have learned to distrust themselves, these signals get dismissed quickly. In people who have experienced danger before, they may be amplified. Neither means the system is broken. It means it adapted. The unsettling realization is that some of your decisions are being guided before you feel like you choose them. Your body is voting first. Logic follows later. And if your brain can trigger instant avoidance without explaining itself, it raises a deeper question. How often has that quiet pullback protected you without you ever knowing what it saved you from? Sudden memory blanks during traumatic events. It is one of the most frightening aftereffects of trauma. Someone asks what happened and your mind goes quiet. Not fuzzy, not unclear. Blank. Whole chunks of time are just gone. You remember before. You remember after. But the middle feels erased. And the question that creeps in is terrifying. How can something so intense just disappear? The shock is this: your brain did not fail to record those moments. It actively stopped recording them. During traumatic events, the brain shifts into pure survival mode. The priority becomes immediate action, not memory creation. Memory is for later. Survival is now. When danger overwhelms your system, the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming coherent memories, gets suppressed by stress hormones. Cortisol and adrenaline flood the brain. That chemical surge helps you react faster, but it disrupts how memories are encoded. Instead of forming a clear timeline, the brain stores fragments, sensations without sequence, images without context, or sometimes nothing accessible at all. This is why traumatic memories often feel disjointed or missing. It is not that the experience vanished. It is that it was never organized into a story your conscious mind can replay. From a survival perspective, this makes sense. Replaying trauma in real time while it is happening would slow you down. It would overwhelm you. So the brain sacrifices memory clarity to preserve function. The validating truth is this: if you have gaps in your memory around a traumatic event, that does not mean you were unconscious, weak, or dissociating incorrectly. It means your brain decided that recording details was less important than getting you through the moment alive. This response is closely tied to dissociation. When the experience becomes too much, awareness narrows. Emotional processing shuts down. The mind focuses on the bare minimum required to endure. Memory formation becomes collateral damage. Later, when you try to remember, the brain cannot retrieve what was never properly stored. That absence can feel deeply unsettling. People worry they are broken or lying without knowing it. But memory blanks are not deception, they are protection. Sometimes memories return later. Sometimes they do not. Both outcomes are normal. The brain may release fragments when it feels safer, or it may keep them inaccessible if it believes recalling them would cause harm. What makes this especially painful is the pressure to explain, to account for every detail. Trauma does not follow those rules. The nervous system does not care about narrative. It cares about survival. The unsettling realization is that memory feels like truth, but memory is conditional. Under enough threat, your brain will trade remembering for surviving without hesitation. And if your brain can erase time to protect you, it raises a deeper question. How much of what you remember is not just what happened, but what your nervous system decided you were allowed to keep? Automatic mirroring of others' emotions in crowds. You have probably felt it without realizing what was happening. You walk into a crowd feeling neutral, maybe even calm, and within minutes your mood shifts. Anxiety creeps in. Excitement builds. Tension spreads through your chest. Nothing directly happened to you, yet your body reacts as if it did. It can feel confusing, like you lost control of your emotional state for no clear reason. The shock is realizing that your brain was never focused only on you. It was scanning everyone else. In crowded environments, your brain automatically starts mirroring the emotional states of the people around you. This happens before conscious thought. Facial expressions, body posture, tone of voice, pace of movement. Your nervous system absorbs all of it and begins to match it. Not out of empathy alone, but out of survival. For most of human history, crowds were dangerous. Group emotion mattered. If fear spread, it usually meant a real threat was nearby. If panic erupted, survival depended on reacting fast, not analyzing why. So the brain evolved to sync emotional states quickly, allowing groups to respond as one. This mirroring is driven by neural systems designed to read and replicate emotional cues. Your brain picks up microsignals without your awareness and adjusts your internal state to match the dominant emotional tone. You do not decide to feel it. Your body aligns automatically. That is why anxiety can spread through a crowd like electricity. One tense person shifts posture. Another senses it. A third reacts to the change. Within moments, the entire group feels on edge without a clear cause. Your brain is not being dramatic. It is updating based on social threat detection. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt emotionally overwhelmed in crowds and blamed yourself for being sensitive, that reaction is not a flaw. It is a deeply ingrained survival response. Your nervous system assumes that group emotion carries important information. This is also why excitement spreads so easily at concerts or sporting events. Shared joy signals safety and unity. Your brain mirrors it for the same reason. Belonging increased survival odds. Isolation increased risk. What makes this response unsettling is how invisible it is. You think you are reacting to your own thoughts, but often you are reacting to the emotional climate around you. Your sense of self blurs slightly in groups because survival once depended on cohesion. After leaving the crowd, many people feel sudden relief or confusion. Why do I feel different now? Nothing changed except the people. That is the point. Your nervous system recalibrates when the group signal disappears. This mechanism can become exhausting in modern life, where crowds are constant and threats are ambiguous. The brain still reacts as if group emotion equals immediate danger or safety. The unsettling realization is that some of your emotions are not born inside you at all. They are absorbed, reflected, shared. If your brain can automatically sync your internal state with a crowd to keep you safe, it raises a deeper question. How often do you mistake survival-driven emotional mirroring for your own feelings, without ever realizing your nervous system was just trying to help you belong and survive at the same time? Hyperfocus on a single escape option. In moments of extreme danger, something strange happens inside your brain. The world suddenly shrinks. Not physically, but perceptually. One path, one door, one window, one route to safety becomes the only thing you can see. Everything else fades into the background. People call it tunnel vision for your actions, but it is more intense than that. It is hyperfocus. Your mind latches onto a single escape option as if your life depends on it, because it does. The shock is realizing just how automatic this process is. You do not decide to lock on. You cannot think yourself out of it. Your brain simply chooses a strategy and eliminates all distractions. In that instant, every detail of the escape path becomes vivid. You notice the texture of the ground beneath your feet, the angle of the door, the way obstacles line up along the way. Every subtle hazard or benefit is magnified, and everything outside that path, effectively invisible. You do not ignore it consciously. Your nervous system filters it out for you. This hyperfocus is not a quirk. It is a survival mechanism with deep evolutionary roots. Early humans faced predators, sudden falls, or violent confrontations with no time for careful deliberation. Pausing to scan the entire environment for all possible exits could be deadly. The brain learned to commit completely to the option that offered the highest chance of immediate survival. The result is what we now experience as obsessive, almost tunnel-like attention to a single escape route. The process is chemical as much as it is neural. When danger hits, the amygdala fires instantly, triggering adrenaline release. Norepinephrine floods the brain, enhancing sensory perception and sharpening focus. At the same time, prefrontal regions responsible for deliberation and multi-tasking are temporarily downregulated. That is why your attention narrows so completely. You can act quickly, react instantly, and move efficiently, but only along the chosen path. There is no time for doubt. There is no energy for second-guessing. Efficiency becomes life itself. It is validating to recognize that if this has happened to you, it does not mean you are irrational or inflexible. On the contrary, your brain is performing a remarkable feat. It is optimizing your chances of survival under extreme stress. People often feel shame afterward because they missed other options, or because they fixate on a single exit even when more exist. But that is the system working exactly as it is supposed to. In life or death moments, the fastest, clearest action often wins, not the most complex evaluation. The odd part is how persistent this hyperfocus can feel. Even after the threat has passed, people sometimes replay the scenario, fixated on the path they chose, the steps they took, or the exact mechanics of movement. That obsessive recall is the brain's way of learning and consolidating what worked. It is not anxiety or guilt. It is survival memory being stored for future reference, improving chances next time. There is also an emotional layer. Hyperfocus provides clarity in chaos. While the body is flooded with adrenaline and stress hormones, the mind is remarkably calm along the chosen path. Fear is still present, but it is harnessed, funneled into action rather than panic. In that sense, hyperfocus is protective not only physically but psychologically. It keeps the mind from fracturing under threat, giving the body a single, manageable problem to solve. Reach safety. The danger comes when this system misfires or persists inappropriately. People who experience repeated trauma may find themselves obsessively fixated on perceived threats or singular solutions long after the immediate danger has passed. That is not a failure of willpower. It is a nervous system that learned to survive by committing fully to a single, high-priority focus. The mechanism is adaptive, but context matters. What saves life in one moment can create stress in another. The unsettling truth is that your conscious perception of choice is often an illusion. In hyperfocus, your brain decides for you. Feeling watched when alone in risky environments. You are alone, but your body does not believe it. You feel it in your shoulders first, a tightness that makes you want to turn around. Your eyes keep flicking to shadows. Every small sound lands heavier than it should. You get the unmistakable sense that someone is watching you even though there is no proof. No footsteps. No voice. Nothing visible. And yet the feeling is strong enough that your pace changes, your breathing shifts, your awareness sharpens. The shock is that this sensation is not imagination or paranoia. It is a survival system activating before evidence appears. For most of human history, being alone in unfamiliar or risky environments was genuinely dangerous. Predators did not announce themselves. Enemies did not make noise on purpose. The ones who survived were the ones whose brains assumed threat before it was confirmed. Feeling watched was not a mistake. It was an early warning. When your brain detects environmental risk, low light, isolation, unfamiliar terrain, limited escape routes, it raises your threat sensitivity. The amygdala increases vigilance. Even without a clear stimulus, your senses widen. Attention spreads outward. The brain begins scanning for patterns, movement, and inconsistencies. That scanning creates the subjective feeling of being observed. Nothing external needs to be watching you. Your brain is watching for you. This response is driven by uncertainty, not fear alone. The human brain hates unknowns in dangerous contexts. When visibility is low or information is incomplete, the safest assumption is that you are not alone. That assumption keeps you alert, mobile, and ready to act. If the brain waited for proof, it would often be too late. The validating truth is this. If you have ever felt watched in a risky environment and later felt embarrassed about it, that reaction does not mean you were irrational. It means your nervous system recognized vulnerability. Alone removes witnesses. Darkness removes clarity. Isolation removes backup. Your brain does not ignore those variables. There is also a sensory explanation for why this feeling is so convincing. Under stress, your brain increases sensitivity to peripheral input. Small movements, shifts in light, background noises. Your mind starts filling in gaps, not because it is lying to you, but because it is preparing you. When information is incomplete, the brain generates threat models. That internal simulation feels external. This is why the feeling often disappears the moment you reach safety. A lit area, other people, a locked space. Your brain receives confirmation that vulnerability has dropped. The sensation fades quickly, sometimes instantly. That speed tells you something important. The feeling was context-driven, not delusion. What makes this experience emotionally intense is that it bypasses logic. You cannot reason your way out of it easily. Telling yourself nothing is there does not help, because the brain is not responding to thoughts. It is responding to environmental risk factors. Logic speaks slower than instinct. This mechanism also explains why the feeling of being watched is stronger when your back is exposed, when escape routes are limited, or when your attention is divided. The brain is constantly calculating how easily you could be surprised or trapped. When the answer is too easily, vigilance spikes. There is an evolutionary layer here that people rarely consider. Humans evolved as both predators and prey. Being watched often meant danger, but watching others also meant opportunity. That dual role trained the brain to assume observation in vulnerable contexts. The safest assumption was always that eyes might be on you. This response can become exaggerated in people who have experienced danger before. Trauma teaches the brain that risk can appear without warning, so the threshold lowers. Feeling watched may activate more easily, even in moderately risky environments. That does not mean the system is broken. It means it learned from experience. Involuntary flinching at sudden movements. It happens before you even know what moved. A hand lifts too fast. A shadow shifts suddenly. Something drops, snaps, lunges, or jerks into your field of view, and your body reacts instantly. Shoulders jump. Head pulls back. Eyes blink hard. Muscles tense like they were yanked by a string. And only after that do you realize there was no real danger. That split second can feel embarrassing. especially when others do not flinch the same way. You might wonder why your body reacted so strongly, so automatically, when your mind knew there was nothing to fear. The shock is realizing that your mind was never in charge of that moment. Involuntary flinching is one of the fastest survival responses the human body has. It exists to protect you before thinking is even possible. The brain does not wait to identify the object, assess intent, or calculate risk. It reacts first and asks questions later. Because in the environments humans evolved in, waiting could mean injury or death. The flinch reflex is driven by ancient neural pathways that bypass conscious awareness. Visual or auditory information hits the thalamus and brainstem first, not the thinking parts of the brain. If sudden movement or sound matches a threat pattern, the body contracts instantly. Eyes close to protect vision. Head pulls back to protect the neck. Arms rise slightly to shield vital organs. All of this happens in milliseconds. You do not decide to flinch. You are already flinching before decision exists. From a survival standpoint, this makes perfect sense. Many threats in nature strike fast. Snakes, falling branches, lunging animals, flying debris. The cost of a false alarm is small. A jump, a moment of embarrassment. The cost of hesitation can be fatal. So evolution favored overreaction. The validating truth is this: if you flinch easily or strongly, it does not mean you are jumpy, weak, or dramatic. It means your nervous system is tuned to protect your body aggressively. That tuning kept humans alive long before modern safety existed. What makes involuntary flinching feel so intense is how physical it is. It bypasses emotion. You might not feel fear at all, just movement. That is because the reflex is not emotional. It is mechanical. A hardwired safety circuit firing exactly as designed. This is also why flinching can happen even when you know the movement is harmless. A friend gestures too fast. Someone throws something playfully. A door slams unexpectedly. Knowledge arrives too late. The body has already acted. There is also a learning component. People who have experienced unpredictable danger often flinch more easily. The brain updates its threat model based on experience. If sudden movements once led to harm, the threshold for reaction lowers. That does not mean you are broken. It means your system adapted to protect you. Interestingly, flinching is often stronger when you are already stressed or tired. Cognitive resources are lower. The brain relies more heavily on reflexive systems. That is why people jump more easily when overwhelmed. It is not loss of control. It is redistribution of control. After the reflex fires, the thinking brain catches up. That is when embarrassment or self-judgment appears. But that judgment is misplaced. You are critiquing a reflex with logic, even though logic was never meant to handle that moment. Flinching also has a social layer. In groups, sudden movement often signals danger to others. One person flinches. Another reacts. This cascade once helped groups respond quickly to threats. Today, it can feel awkward, but the wiring remains. What is unsettling is realizing how little authority conscious thought has in moments like this. You believe you are in control of your reactions until your body proves otherwise. The flinch reveals the hierarchy. Survival first, explanation later. This reflex can also become exaggerated in unsafe environments, loud cities, chaotic homes, volatile workplaces. The nervous system stays primed. Flinching becomes more frequent. Again, not because you are fragile, but because your brain believes unpredictability equals risk. The deeper truth is that your body does not wait for certainty. It waits for probability. Sudden movement carries risk. Nightmares replaying threatening experiences. You wake up with your heart already racing. Your body feels like it never left the danger. Muscles tight, breath shallow. The images linger even after your eyes open. A chase, a fall, a presence. Something threatening that feels painfully familiar, even if the details are distorted. And the worst part is realizing this was not random. Your brain chose to bring you back there. The shock is that nightmares are not your mind losing control while you sleep. They are your brain doing unfinished survival work. When you experience danger, especially overwhelming danger, your nervous system prioritizes action over processing. Just like memory blanks or pain suppression, emotional integration gets postponed. The threat may end, but the brain does not immediately mark it as resolved. Some part of you stays on watch. Sleep is when the brain finally has space to deal with it. During certain stages of sleep, especially REM, the brain replays emotionally charged material. But it does not replay it for entertainment. It does it to learn, to rehearse, to prepare. Nightmares are threat simulations. Your brain running drills in the safest environment it has, your dreams. This mechanism is ancient. Long before modern life, dreaming about danger helped humans rehearse responses without real risk. If a predator attacked once, replaying variations of that threat in dreams increased the chance of surviving the next encounter. The brain learned through repetition. That is why nightmares often exaggerate threat. The point is not accuracy. The point is readiness. The validating truth is this: if you have nightmares that replay threatening experiences, it does not mean you are weak, broken, or unable to move on. It means your brain has not finished processing what happened and is trying to protect you from it happening again. Nightmares often replay emotions more than events. Fear, helplessness, panic, loss of control. The details change because the brain is not focused on memory fidelity. It is focused on threat patterns. What went wrong? What felt dangerous? What needs preparing for? This is also why nightmares can feel more intense than the actual event. During sleep, the rational brain is quieter. Emotional centers are louder. There is less logic to buffer the experience. The fear comes through raw and unfiltered. People often try to suppress nightmares or judge themselves for having them. But suppression usually backfires. The brain interprets avoidance as unfinished business. The threat remains unprocessed, so the replay continues. What actually helps is safety. When your nervous system starts to believe you are no longer under threat, the nightmares often soften or change. Not because you forced them away, but because the brain finally receives the signal that rehearsal is no longer necessary. There is something unsettling about realizing your brain uses sleep to scare you on purpose. But the intention is not cruelty. It is prevention. Nightmares are the brain asking, "Are we ready if this happens again?" In people who have experienced repeated trauma, this system can become overactive. The brain stops distinguishing between past and present danger. Nightmares persist because the nervous system stays on guard. That does not mean the system is broken. It means it learned that threats return. The important thing to understand is that nightmares are not the trauma itself. They are the brain's attempt to resolve it. Sometimes clumsy, sometimes intense, but always protective in intent. The unsettling realization is that rest does not always mean peace. Sometimes sleep is where the brain finally confronts what it could not handle while awake. And here is the tease that matters. If your brain can use dreams to rehearse danger long after it has passed, it means your sense of safety is not decided by logic or time. It is decided by whether your nervous system believes the threat is truly over. Nightmares are not your mind betraying you. They are your survival instincts refusing to stand down until they are sure you are safe. False pattern recognition under stress. Your brain starts connecting dots that may not actually be connected. A look feels loaded. A sound feels intentional. Coincidences stack up and suddenly it feels obvious that something is wrong. Even when you cannot explain it clearly, everything seems to fit a pattern. Later, when the stress fades, you look back and think, why did I read so much into that? The shock is that your brain was not malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what stress trained it to do. Under threat, the brain becomes obsessed with meaning. Randomness is dangerous when survival is on the line. If something bad could be predicted, it had to be. So the stressed brain shifts from accuracy to speed. It would rather see a false pattern than miss a real one. This is called threat-based pattern recognition, and it is deeply wired into human survival. When stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood the brain, the balance changes. The prefrontal cortex, the part that checks logic and probability, becomes quieter. Meanwhile, older brain systems responsible for detecting danger become dominant. These systems are not precise. They are cautious. They look for repetition, correlation, and similarity to past threats. In other words, your brain starts asking one question over and over. Does this resemble danger I have seen before? If the answer is even slightly yes, the brain fills in the gaps. That is why under stress, people start seeing intent where there may be none. A neutral comment feels hostile. A stranger feels suspicious. A series of unrelated events suddenly feels connected. The brain is building a narrative fast because narratives help you prepare. From a survival perspective, this made sense. Early humans who noticed patterns quickly had an advantage. If rustling bushes, broken branches, and silence followed each other before a predator attack, connecting those dots mattered. Seeing a pattern that was not real cost little. Missing a real one could cost everything. The validating truth is this. If you have ever felt embarrassed about reading too much into things during stress, that reaction does not mean you are irrational or paranoid. It means your brain was prioritizing safety over accuracy. False pattern recognition is not delusion. It is overprotection. What makes this response so convincing is that stress also increases confidence. When the brain commits to a pattern under threat, it commits hard. Doubt is inefficient. Hesitation is risky. So once a narrative forms, it feels obvious, clear, certain, even when evidence is thin. This is why arguments escalate under stress. Each person sees patterns that support their sense of threat. Tone shifts become proof. Timing becomes suspicious. Intent is inferred instead of observed. The brain is not looking for truth. It is looking for control. There is also a memory component. Stress pulls from past experiences to build patterns. If you were hurt before, the brain reuses those templates. The present situation does not have to match exactly. It only has to resemble enough to trigger caution. This is why false pattern recognition is more common in people under chronic stress or with past trauma. The brain learned that danger hides in subtle details, so it scans aggressively. Again, not because something is wrong, but because something once was. The danger of this mechanism is not the pattern itself. It is what happens when the stress never resolves. If the nervous system stays activated, the brain does not get the chance to correct itself. The false pattern never gets tested against safety. It just stays. That is when people feel stuck in suspicion, hypervigilance, or constant interpretation, not because they are choosing it, but because their brain never received the signal that accuracy matters again. Once safety returns, the brain usually recalibrates. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. Patterns loosen. Ambiguity becomes tolerable. Overestimating danger in unfamiliar places. The moment you step into an unfamiliar place, something subtle shifts inside you. Your body tightens just a little. Your eyes track exits without you meaning to. Sounds feel sharper. Distances feel longer. Ordinary people feel harder to read. Nothing has gone wrong, but your nervous system is already acting like something might. The shock is realizing that this reaction is not anxiety in the usual sense. It is your survival brain quietly taking control. When humans enter unfamiliar environments, the brain automatically increases perceived danger. Not because the place is objectively unsafe, but because it is unknown. And for most of human history, unknown was one of the biggest threats there was. Familiar places meant learned patterns. You knew where to hide, where to run, who belonged. Unfamiliar places meant uncertainty, and uncertainty could get you killed. So the brain learned to assume risk first and safety later. In unfamiliar settings, your threat detection systems become more sensitive. The amygdala ramps up vigilance. The brain gathers data aggressively. Who is here? Where could danger come from? How fast could I escape? Because there is no stored map yet, the brain fills in the blanks with caution. That caution feels like danger. This is why neutral behaviors can feel suspicious in new places. A glance feels longer. A sound feels intentional. A normal interaction feels loaded. Your brain is not misreading on purpose. It is compensating for lack of information. From a survival standpoint, this bias was smart. Overestimating danger in a new environment kept people alive long enough to learn it. Underestimating danger did not. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt on edge, guarded, or overly alert in unfamiliar places and judged yourself for it, that reaction is not weakness. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do. Protect first. Relax later. What makes this response uncomfortable is that it does not wait for evidence. Your brain does not say, "Let us see if this place is safe." It says, "Assume it is not until proven otherwise." Safety has to be earned through repetition, through time, through familiarity. This is also why the same place feels safer after multiple visits, even if nothing about it objectively changed. Your brain built a map. It learned patterns. It downgraded threat. The danger did not decrease. Your certainty increased. Stress and fatigue make this effect stronger. When your mental resources are low, the brain leans harder on protective assumptions. Unfamiliar equals risky. Familiar equals manageable. This is why travel, moving, or entering new social environments can feel disproportionately draining. There is also a social layer. In unfamiliar places, you do not know the rules. Who is friendly? Who belongs? What behavior is normal? The brain treats social uncertainty as physical risk because historically it often was. Overestimating danger is the cost of staying alive long enough to learn. The unsettling realization is that your sense of safety is not based purely on reality. It is based on predictability. A dangerous place you understand can feel safer than a harmless place you do not. And here is the tease that stays with you. If your brain automatically inflates risk in unfamiliar environments to keep you alive, how many of your fears are not signals of real danger, but signals of uncertainty? How often discomfort is not warning you that something is wrong, but that something is new and your survival system has not caught up yet? Emotional detachment after near-death experiences. After surviving something that could have killed you, people expect tears, gratitude, relief, a renewed love for life. And sometimes that happens. But just as often, something else shows up instead. A strange calm, emotional distance, a flatness that feels unsettling. You tell the story of what happened and notice your voice sounds disconnected, like you are talking about someone else. That emotional detachment can be more disturbing than the danger itself. The shock is realizing that this numbness is not a failure to feel. It is a survival response turning itself on full force. When the brain faces a near-death experience, it gets overwhelmed fast. The nervous system floods with stress hormones meant to keep the body alive. Heart rate spikes, perception narrows, pain may disappear, time may distort. In that moment, emotional processing becomes secondary. Survival takes priority, but when the danger passes, the brain does not immediately switch everything back. Emotional detachment after near death is the brain's way of preventing overload. The experience was too intense, too close, too threatening to integrate all at once. So the nervous system creates distance. It dulls emotion, not because the event did not matter, but because it mattered too much. This detachment often feels like watching life through glass. You are present, but not fully inside your feelings. Joy feels muted. Fear feels distant. Even relationships can feel slightly unreal. People may tell you that you should feel lucky to be alive, and you understand that intellectually, but emotionally it does not land. The validating truth is this: if you felt emotionally detached after surviving something serious, that does not mean you are cold, ungrateful, or broken. It means your brain protected you from being crushed by the meaning of what almost happened. There is a neurological reason for this. During extreme threat, the brain can suppress emotional centers while keeping cognitive awareness online. This allows you to function without being paralyzed by fear or grief. Afterward, those emotional systems do not immediately come back online. The brain waits until it believes you are safe enough to feel. Detachment is a buffer. This is why some people only feel the emotional impact weeks or months later. Once the nervous system relaxes, feelings return. Sometimes suddenly, sometimes in waves, sometimes through dreams or unexpected triggers. The brain releases the stored emotion when it senses stability. What makes this response confusing is that society expects instant emotional resolution. Survived equals relieved. But the nervous system does not follow social timelines. It follows safety. There is also a psychological layer. Near-death experiences shatter assumptions. You realize how fragile everything is, how little control you truly have. That realization can create emotional distance as the mind tries to rebuild a sense of reality that no longer feels solid. Detachment can also protect identity. Fully feeling what almost happened might force you to confront how close you came to not existing. For many brains, that is too much all at once. So emotion is delayed. In some cases, detachment feels peaceful. In others, it feels empty or unsettling. Both are normal. The response depends on how the nervous system learned to cope with threat in the past. The danger comes when people judge this response or try to force feeling before the brain is ready. That pressure can actually prolong numbness. Safety, patience, and grounding are what allow emotions to return. Sudden bursts of strength during emergencies. You never plan for it. There is no warning. One moment your body feels normal, limited, familiar. The next moment, you are lifting something you should not be able to lift. Running faster than you ever have. Holding weight force or resistance that would normally crush you. And afterward, when it is over, you are left shaking, confused, sometimes even injured, wondering how that was possible. The shock is realizing that strength you did not know you had was never trained. It was unlocked. Sudden bursts of strength during emergencies are not myths or movie exaggerations. They are real, and they come from a survival override built into the human nervous system. When the brain perceives an immediate life-threatening situation, it stops caring about long-term damage and starts caring about one thing only: survival right now. Under extreme threat, the brain releases a powerful cocktail of stress hormones. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream, pain perception drops, muscle fibers activate more fully, inhibitory signals that normally limit force output get suppressed. Your body stops protecting itself from injury and starts using everything it has. Normally, your brain limits how much strength you can access. This is not weakness. It is safety. Muscles are capable of generating enough force to tear tendons, damage joints, and break bones. So the nervous system holds back. It keeps a margin. But in an emergency, that margin disappears. Your brain makes a calculation that happens faster than thought. Injury later is acceptable if it means survival now. So it removes the brakes. This is why people have lifted cars off trapped bodies, held doors against impossible force, or fought off attackers with strength that seems unreal. It is not that the muscles suddenly changed. It is that the limits were temporarily removed. The validating truth is this: if you have ever experienced a burst of strength during danger and later doubted yourself or felt disturbed by it, that reaction is normal. You glimpsed what your body can do when preservation overrides protection. What often follows these moments is delayed pain, trembling, or exhaustion. That is the cost. Once the threat passes, the nervous system restores limits. Pain signals return. Damage becomes noticeable. The body starts accounting for what it ignored. This response is rare by design. Living in that state would destroy the body. So the brain only releases it when the perceived threat crosses a critical threshold. Not fear, not stress, but immediate survival risk. Interestingly, people often report feeling detached or hyperfocused during these moments. That is not coincidence. Emotional narrowing helps direct energy into action. Distraction disappears. The world collapses into one objective: get out, hold on, protect, escape. Afterward, many people struggle to reconcile what they did with who they believe they are. I am not strong enough to do that, but the truth is, you are not meant to be strong like that most of the time. You are meant to be safe. There is also a psychological layer that matters. Knowing this capacity exists can be unsettling. It challenges the idea that you fully understand your own limits. But it also reveals something powerful. Your body prioritizes your survival more fiercely than your comfort, your logic, or your self-image. The unsettling realization is that the version of you that exists in emergencies is not the same version that exists day to day. Different rules apply. Different systems take control. And here is the tease that stays with you. If your nervous system can unlock extraordinary strength when it believes your life is at risk, what other abilities are being held back right now? Not because you lack them, but because your brain is choosing safety over access. Sudden strength is not magic. It is mental time travel to predict worst-case scenarios. Your mind jumps ahead without asking permission. You are standing in the present, but suddenly you are already in the aftermath, the argument that has not happened yet, the accident that has not occurred, the mistake you have not made. You play it out in detail. what you would say, how it would end, how bad it could get, and the more you imagine it, the more real it feels. The shock is realizing that your brain is not spiraling randomly. It is rehearsing. Mental time travel is the brain's ability to simulate future events under stress or uncertainty. This ability shifts toward worst-case scenarios, not because your mind is negative by nature, but because survival once depended on predicting danger before it arrived. The human brain evolved to ask one critical question: what could go wrong next? When the environment feels uncertain or threatening, your brain stops living only in the present. It projects you forward in time, running simulations. If this happens, then that happens. If that goes wrong, then this follows. Each imagined outcome is a data point. Each scenario is a way to prepare. This happens automatically. You do not choose to imagine disaster. The brain generates it because preparation increases survival odds. From an evolutionary perspective, this was incredibly useful. Early humans who mentally rehearsed worst-case outcomes had an advantage. If a hunt failed, if a rival attacked, if shelter collapsed, thinking through danger ahead of time made faster reactions possible when it mattered. The validating truth is this: if you often imagine worst-case scenarios and feel frustrated with yourself for it, that habit is not a flaw. It is a protective mechanism trying to keep you alive in an unpredictable world. What makes this response emotionally exhausting is that the brain does not distinguish between imagined threat and real threat very well. When you simulate danger vividly, your nervous system reacts as if it is happening now. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, stress hormones release. The body prepares for an event that exists only in thought. That is why mental time travel feels so real. Your brain believes its own simulations. This mechanism becomes especially strong when you lack control. If you cannot directly influence an outcome, your brain compensates by imagining every possible version of it. Control through prediction replaces control through action. There is also a memory component. The brain uses past experiences as templates. If something went wrong before, that memory becomes fuel for future simulations. The mind says, remember what happened last time. Do not get caught off guard again. This is why people with past trauma often experience intense worst-case thinking. The brain learned that danger can arrive suddenly, so it stays ahead of time, scanning futures for threat. The problem is not the simulation itself. The problem is when the brain never turns it off. In modern life, many threats are abstract, slow, or social. But the brain treats them like immediate danger, so it keeps running scenarios that never resolve. You imagine outcomes you cannot actually prepare for. The rehearsal becomes rumination. That is when mental time travel stops being useful and starts feeling like anxiety. The important thing to understand is that this mechanism is biased by design. It does not imagine best-case scenarios with the same intensity because best-case outcomes do not protect you. Worst-case outcome. Startle reflex to harmless sounds. It happens so fast it almost feels insulting. A door closes a little too hard. Someone drops a spoon. A notification chimes unexpectedly. Your body jumps like you were just threatened, even though your mind immediately knows it was harmless. Heart spikes. Muscles tense. Breath catches. And then comes the embarrassment. Why did I react like that to nothing? The shock is realizing your body did not mistake the sound. It ignored what the sound was and reacted to how suddenly it appeared. The startle reflex exists to respond to surprise, not danger. And surprise was once one of the most reliable indicators of danger there was. In the wild, threats rarely announced themselves. a snapping branch, a sudden crash, a sharp noise breaking silence. Those moments mattered because they often came right before harm, so the brain learned a rule that still runs today. Sudden equals act now. When a sound appears abruptly, it bypasses conscious thought. The auditory signal goes straight to the brainstem and amygdala, areas responsible for rapid threat response. There is no time spent evaluating meaning. The body contracts instantly. Shoulders rise to protect the neck. Eyes blink to protect vision. Muscles prepare for movement. Only after that does your thinking brain catch up and say it is fine. You do not jump because you are scared. You jump because your brain refuses to wait. The validating truth is this: if you startle easily at harmless sounds, that does not mean you are weak, anxious, or overly sensitive. It means your nervous system prioritizes speed over accuracy. That priority kept humans alive long before logic had time to speak. What makes this response feel so frustrating is that it ignores context. You can know exactly where you are. You can be completely safe. You can even expect noise. And still, if it happens suddenly enough, the reflex fires anyway. That is because the startle reflex does not consult memory or reasoning. It operates on one variable: unexpected sensory input. This reflex becomes stronger under stress, fatigue, or emotional overload. When your nervous system is already on edge, the threshold lowers. Sounds do not have to be loud to trigger it. They only have to be abrupt. This is why people in chaotic or unpredictable environments startle more easily. Their brains learned that sudden changes often mean something is wrong. The reflex adapts to context. Again, not because something is broken, but because something was learned. There is also a social layer to this. In groups, one person startling can trigger others. That chain reaction once helped communities respond quickly to danger. Today, it just makes the moment awkward. After the reflex fires, the thinking brain often adds judgment. Why am I like this? Why can everyone else stay calm? But that judgment is misplaced. You are evaluating a reflex with logic even though logic was never involved. The reflex is not emotional, it is mechanical. Interestingly, repeated exposure to the same harmless sounds can reduce the response. Not because the reflex disappears, but because predictability returns. The brain updates its threat model. Sudden no longer equals unknown. Unknown no longer equals risk. This tells you something important. The reflex is not about noise itself. It is about uncertainty. The unsettling realization is how little control you have over your first reaction. You believe you are calm until your body proves otherwise. The startle reflex reveals the hierarchy of the brain. Survival system. Feeling exhaustion only after danger has passed. During the danger, you feel sharp, focused, awake in a way that feels almost unreal. Your body moves when it needs to. Decisions come fast. You do not feel tired. You do not feel weak. You might even feel strangely calm. And then, the moment it is over, when you are finally safe, it hits you all at once. Your limbs feel heavy. Your head fogs. You want to sit down or lie down immediately. Sometimes you shake. Sometimes you feel like you could sleep for hours. The shock is that the exhaustion does not show up when you need strength. It waits. Feeling exhaustion only after danger has passed is not a delayed reaction. It is a planned one. During a threatening situation, your brain suppresses fatigue on purpose. Survival systems take control and temporarily shut down signals that would slow you down. Tiredness is not useful when escape, defense, or rapid action is required. So, the body postpones it. This happens through stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These chemicals increase alertness, boost energy availability, and keep muscles responsive. They also block fatigue signals coming from the body. You are running on emergency power. While this is happening, your body is still burning resources. Muscles are working hard. The heart is pumping faster. The brain is consuming enormous amounts of energy. But the cost is hidden. The bill comes later. The validating truth is this: if you have ever wondered why you felt fine during a crisis but completely drained afterward, that is not weakness catching up to you. That is your nervous system finally allowing you to feel what it delayed. Once the brain determines that the threat has passed, the survival override shuts down. Stress hormones drop. The nervous system shifts out of high alert, and suddenly, all the signals that were muted rush back in: fatigue, soreness, emotional weight, sometimes even pain. This is why exhaustion after danger can feel overwhelming. It is not just tiredness from effort. It is recovery from sustained hyperactivation. There is also an emotional component. During danger, emotions are narrowed to keep you functional. Fear, grief, relief, and shock often get pushed aside. When safety returns, those emotions resurface along with physical exhaustion. The combination can feel crushing. This response was incredibly adaptive. Early humans needed to escape threats first and collapse later. Resting too early could be fatal, so the body learned to hold itself together until safety was confirmed. That is why the exhaustion often hits the moment you close the door, sit down, or reach help. The brain finally gets proof that you can stop. People often judge themselves for this reaction. Why am I falling apart now? I should be relieved. But relief does not equal recovery. Your system has to come down gradually. This delayed exhaustion can be stronger in people who stay composed under pressure. The more effectively you suppress signals during danger, the more intense the release afterward. It is not that you handled it badly. It is that you handled it very well. There is also a reason this exhaustion can feel sudden and total. Stress hormones do not taper gently. They drop sharply once the brain decides the emergency is over. That sudden chemical shift leaves the body feeling empty, shaky, or depleted. In some cases, people feel embarrassed by how drained they are afterward, especially if others seem fine. But nervous systems vary. Different bodies release stress differently. None of it reflects strength or weakness. What matters is understanding that this exhaustion is not failure, it is completion. The unsettling realization is that your body knows when it is safe long before your mind fully processes it. The collapse comes not because you are no loss of appetite during prolonged stress. The food can be right in front of you, and your body wants nothing to do with it. Your stomach feels tight, closed, almost turned off. The idea of eating feels pointless or even uncomfortable. You might know you should eat. You might even feel weak. But hunger is gone, not reduced. Gone. And the longer the stress lasts, the more distant appetite becomes. The shock is realizing this is not your body failing to take care of itself. It is your body choosing survival over nourishment. Under prolonged stress, your brain shifts priorities in a very specific way. Eating requires safety. Digestion requires rest. Both are luxuries in a dangerous environment. So when your nervous system believes a threat is ongoing, it suppresses appetite to keep you alert, mobile, and focused. This response begins in the hypothalamus, the brain region that regulates hunger, stress, and hormones. When stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline stay elevated, they directly interfere with hunger signals. Ghrelin, the hormone that tells you to eat, gets disrupted. Blood flow is redirected away from the digestive system toward muscles and the brain. Your gut literally becomes a lower priority. From a survival perspective, this makes perfect sense. If early humans stopped to eat while danger was unresolved, they became vulnerable. Digestion slows reaction time. It anchors you in place. It pulls energy inward. So the brain learned to postpone hunger until safety returned. The validating truth is this: if you have lost your appetite during long periods of stress, that does not mean you are broken, disordered, or weak. It means your nervous system believes the environment is not safe enough for rest and replenishment yet. This is why appetite loss often shows up during ongoing uncertainty rather than brief stress. A sudden scare might not kill hunger, but sustained pressure does. Financial stress, relationship conflict, illness, trauma, chronic unpredictability. The brain stays in a state of readiness, and hunger stays muted. What makes this especially confusing is that modern stress rarely looks like physical danger. You are not running from predators. You are not hiding from attackers. Yet your brain does not distinguish well between physical threat and prolonged psychological threat. To your nervous system, unresolved stress is unresolved danger. There is also an emotional layer. Eating requires presence. Stress fragments attention. When your mind is constantly scanning for problems, planning, worrying, or bracing, it becomes difficult to tune into bodily cues. Hunger signals get drowned out by vigilance. People often blame themselves for this response. They think they are neglecting their body. In reality, the body is following orders from the brain. Eat later. Stay sharp now. This suppression can feel protective at first. Some people even feel strangely energized despite not eating much. That is adrenaline doing its job. But this state is not meant to last. Over time, appetite loss leads to fatigue, irritability, and further stress, creating a feedback loop. What makes appetite loss so frustrating is that you cannot force hunger back easily. Telling yourself to eat does not work, because hunger is not a decision. It is a signal, and signals only return when the brain believes it is safe to send them. This is why appetite often comes roaring back once stress lifts. A problem resolves. A threat ends, safety returns. Suddenly you are starving. That rebound is not random. It is the nervous system releasing the brakes. In some people, prolonged stress teaches the brain that hunger is inconvenient. Appetite suppression becomes habitual. Meals get skipped not out of choice, but out of absence. That does not mean the body stopped needing food. It means the alarm system never powered down. The unsettling realization is that hunger, something we think of as basic and automatic, is conditional. You feel it when your brain decides conditions allow it. If your brain can silence hunger for weeks or months to keep you vigilant, it reveals sudden urge to seek social connection after trauma. After something frightening or overwhelming happens, there is often a strange impulse that surprises people. Instead of wanting to be alone, you feel pulled toward others. You want to call someone, sit near people, hear a voice. Even if you do not want to talk about what happened, you want presence. Silence feels unbearable, but not the quiet kind, the empty kind. The shock is that this urge is not emotional weakness or dependency. It is survival wiring activating at a deep level. After trauma, your brain does not just assess danger. It assesses isolation. For most of human history, being alone after a threat was one of the most dangerous states you could be in. Injury, shock, predators, or secondary attacks were more likely when you were isolated. So the brain evolved a powerful response that pushes you toward social contact once immediate danger has passed. This is not about comfort in the modern sense. It is about regulation. When trauma hits, your nervous system is thrown into extreme imbalance. Stress hormones spike. Heart rate stays elevated. Muscles remain tense. Even if the event is over, your body does not immediately believe it. Social connection is one of the fastest ways the nervous system knows how to calm itself. Being near others triggers the release of oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin counteracts cortisol. It slows heart rate. It lowers threat perception. It tells the brain, you are not alone, which historically meant survival odds just went up. This is why even quiet companionship helps. You do not need advice. You do not need reassurance. You just need proximity, a shared space, a voice in the background, another nervous system nearby to help yours settle. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt an intense need to be around people after trauma and judged yourself for it, that urge does not mean you are needy or incapable. It means your brain is trying to stabilize itself using the most reliable tool it has ever known: other humans. This response is especially strong after events that involve helplessness or loss of control. Trauma isolates you internally. It makes you feel separate from your body, your emotions, your sense of safety. Seeking others is the nervous system's way of restoring connection, both externally and internally. What makes this confusing is that trauma can also make people want to withdraw. Both urges can exist at the same time. Part of you wants closeness, another part wants distance. That conflict is not dysfunction. It is two survival strategies competing. One protects you from further harm. The other helps you recover. Social seeking often wins once the immediate threat is gone because regulation becomes the priority. You survived. Now your system needs to come back down. There is also a biological memory at play. Humans evolved in groups where safety depended on collective response. After danger, groups would gather, assess injuries, share information, and reestablish order. Your brain still expects that sequence. Trauma breaks the normal flow of life. Social contact helps restart it. This is why isolation after trauma often makes symptoms worse. Anxiety increases. Thoughts spiral. The body stays on high alert. Without external cues of safety, the nervous system has no reference point to power down. Importantly, this urge does not always mean talking about the trauma. Sometimes words are too much. Sometimes the body just needs co-regulation, sitting next to someone, watching something together, sharing space. These are not distractions. They are biological signals of safety. People often misinterpret this urge as emotional dependence, especially in cultures that value independence. But independence is a modern ideal. Survival was communal. Your nervous system has not forgotten that. This response can become even stronger in people who experienced trauma alone. The brain learns that isolation equals danger and pushes harder toward connection next time. Again, not weakness, learning. The unsettling realization is that self-regulation has limits. You are not designed to handle extreme stress entirely on your own. No amount of logic or willpower replaces the stabilizing effect of safe human presence. And here is the tease hidden in heightened sense of smell in threatening settings. You might not notice it at first. The air feels sharper. Scents seem louder somehow. A faint smell of smoke, sweat, metal, damp earth, something unfamiliar that makes your nose wrinkle before your mind catches up. In a threatening or unfamiliar environment, your sense of smell can suddenly feel amplified, like it stepped forward while everything else fell slightly quiet. The shock is realizing this is not imagination or sensitivity. It is a survival system shifting sensory priority. When danger is possible, The brain does not rely on vision alone. Smell is one of the oldest warning systems humans have. Long before clear sight or language, scent detected predators, fire, spoiled food, illness, and other humans. So when your brain senses risk, it increases attention to olfactory input automatically. This happens because stress hormones heighten sensory processing. The olfactory system has a direct connection to the limbic system, the emotional and survival center of the brain. Unlike other senses, smell does not pass through heavy rational filtering first. It goes straight to areas that decide threat, memory, and emotion. That makes it fast and powerful. In threatening settings, your brain subtly tunes in to chemical signals in the environment. Smoke means fire. Blood or metal can mean injury. Sweat can signal fear or aggression in others. Even changes in air quality can indicate enclosed spaces or lack of escape. Your nose becomes a scanner. The validating truth is this: if you have ever noticed smells becoming intense or suddenly meaningful when you felt unsafe, that response is not strange. It is ancient. Your nervous system is gathering information from every channel it can. Smell is especially useful when vision is limited. Darkness, crowded spaces, obstructed views. In those moments, scent fills the gaps. You might not see danger, but you can sense it. That feeling that something smells wrong is not poetic. It is literal. There is also a memory component that makes this response emotionally charged. Smell is deeply tied to memory storage. When you smell something associated with past danger, the brain can react before you consciously remember why. The scent triggers the survival response directly. That is why certain smells can cause instant unease without explanation. In threatening environments, the brain becomes more sensitive to changes, not just strong odors. A new smell entering the space, a familiar smell disappearing. Both can signal that something has shifted. Your awareness sharpens to contrast, not intensity alone. People often dismiss this sense because it feels subjective, but smell guided survival for thousands of years. The brain does not ignore it when stakes are high. It leans into it. This heightened awareness can feel overwhelming. Smells that normally fade into the background become distracting or unpleasant. That is because your brain is no longer filtering them out. It assumes everything could matter. Interestingly, this response is stronger when you are already stressed or alone. Isolation increases vulnerability. Stress increases sensory vigilance. Together, they turn smell into an early warning system. This also explains why once safety returns, smells dull again. You stop noticing them. The system powers down. Your brain decides the extra data is no longer necessary. What makes this unsettling is realizing how much information you process without awareness. Your environment is constantly sending chemical signals, and most of the time your brain ignores them. In danger, it listens closely. There is also a social survival layer. Humans can subconsciously detect fear or stress in others through scent. Chemosignals released through sweat can influence group alertness. When one person is afraid, others may become uneasy without knowing. Automatic avoidance of dark or enclosed spaces. Your body reacts before you form a thought. You see a dark hallway, a narrow stairwell, a cramped room with no clear exit, and something in you hesitates. Your pace slows. Your chest tightens slightly. You feel an urge to stay where you are or take a longer, brighter route, even if it makes no logical sense. You might tell yourself you are being silly, but the resistance does not disappear. The shock is that this reaction is not fear of the dark itself. It is fear of what the dark takes away. Dark or enclosed spaces reduce information. They limit visibility, movement, and escape. And for a survival-oriented brain, limited information equals increased danger. Your nervous system does not care that the space is modern, familiar, or technically safe. It reacts to conditions, not context. For most of human history, darkness and enclosure were genuinely risky. Predators hid in shadows, enemies ambushed from tight spaces. Caves, dense foliage, narrow paths, and unlit areas removed the ability to see threats coming or flee quickly. Humans who avoided those environments, unless necessary, survived more often. So the brain learned a simple rule. If you cannot see clearly and cannot move freely, assume risk. When you approach dark or enclosed spaces, the amygdala increases threat sensitivity. Your brain scans for exits, listens harder, and prepares your body for rapid response. Heart rate may increase slightly, muscles tense, attention narrows. None of this requires conscious fear. It is automatic. The validating truth is this. If you avoid dark hallways, tight rooms, elevators, tunnels, or enclosed spaces without fully knowing why, that does not make you irrational. It means your nervous system is prioritizing safety over convenience. This response is stronger when you are alone. Alone removes backup. It increases vulnerability. Darkness plus isolation tells the brain that if something goes wrong, help will not arrive quickly. So avoidance intensifies. It is also stronger when exits are unclear. Even a well-lit room can feel threatening if escape routes feel blocked. The brain constantly calculates how easily you could leave if danger appeared. When the answer is not easily, discomfort rises. People often confuse this response with anxiety or claustrophobia. But at its core, it is spatial threat assessment. The brain is evaluating terrain the same way it always has. Can you see? Can you move? Can you escape? This is why the discomfort often vanishes the moment lights turn on or doors open. Nothing about the space changed except information and mobility. The brain recalculates and relaxes. Trauma can amplify this response. If someone has experienced danger in enclosed or dark environments, the brain learns quickly. It lowers the threshold. Avoidance becomes stronger and faster. That does not mean the system is broken. It means it learned from experience. Modern life puts people in enclosed spaces constantly. Cars, elevators, offices, crowded buildings. The brain tolerates them because they are familiar, but under stress, tolerance drops. Survival systems resurface. What makes this response uncomfortable is that it clashes with logic. You know the space is safe. Your body does not care. Logic evolved later. Instinct came first. The unsettling realization is that your sense of safety depends heavily on visibility and freedom of movement. Take those away, and ancient alarms wake up instantly. And here is the tease that stays with you. If your brain can generate strong avoidance without any immediate threat, purely based on environmental conditions, how many other preferences, habits, or decisions are quietly shaped by survival instincts you think are just personal quirks? That pause before entering, that choice to walk the long way, that relief when you step back into open light, it is not fear controlling you. Mental rehearsal of escape routes without awareness. You do it without noticing. You walk into a room, a store, a parking structure, a train car, and something in your awareness quietly maps the space. Doors, openings, narrow points. You do not stop and think, where would I go if something happened? Yet later, if danger suddenly appeared, your body would already know which direction to move. The shock is realizing that part of you is always preparing an exit plan, even when you believe you are relaxed. This mental rehearsal of escape routes happens beneath conscious awareness. Your brain is constantly scanning environments for navigability. Where can I move? Where could I get trapped? What path offers the least resistance? This is not anxiety. It is spatial survival intelligence running in the background. For most of human history, hesitation during danger was deadly. People who paused to think lost precious time. The brain adapted by pre-loading possible responses before they were needed. That way, action could be immediate. When you enter a space, your hippocampus and threat detection systems work together. The hippocampus handles spatial memory and layout. The amygdala evaluates potential risk. Together, they create a silent mental map. You are not imagining disasters. You are preparing for them without emotion attached. This is why you often choose seats near exits without knowing why. Why you feel uneasy in rooms with no windows. Why you instinctively stand where you can see entrances. These are not habits you reasoned into. They are survival preferences expressed through behavior. The validating truth is this. If you have ever realized after the fact that you already knew how to leave a space quickly, that does not mean you were secretly anxious. It means your brain did what it evolved to do. Prepare quietly so you do not have to panic later. This process becomes more active in unfamiliar environments. New spaces carry unknown variables. The brain responds by increasing spatial awareness. In familiar spaces, rehearsal still happens, but it fades into the background because the map is already stored. Stress amplifies this behavior. When your nervous system is elevated, your brain prioritizes threat readiness. Escape routes become more salient. You might find your eyes drifting toward doors or open areas without intention. That is attention being guided by survival logic, not fear. Interestingly, this rehearsal does not always involve dramatic danger. It can activate for subtle threats, social discomfort, conflict, overcrowding, anything that raises uncertainty. The brain does not wait for catastrophe. It prepares for possibility. This is also why you sometimes feel relief after identifying an exit, even if nothing happens. Once the brain knows how to leave, perceived risk drops, control increases. Your body relaxes slightly. The plan does not need to be used, it just needs to exist. People often think preparedness equals worry, but worry is conscious rumination. This is different. This is fast, quiet, and efficient. It does not drain energy, it saves it. There is a developmental layer here too. Children naturally orient toward caregivers and exits. As adults, that same system remains, just more subtle. The brain never stops asking the same basic question. If something goes wrong, how do I survive? Trauma can intensify this response. If escape once mattered greatly, the brain learns to rehearse more thoroughly. Routes get mapped faster. Discomfort arises in spaces with limited options. Again, this is not malfunction. It is learning. What makes this unsettling is realizing how much preparation happens without your permission. You believe you are present in the moment, but part of your mind is always planning a future you hope never arrives. And yet, this planning rarely interferes. Rapid judgment based on minimal information. You meet someone for the first time and within seconds, something clicks. Or doesn't. You cannot explain it clearly, but you feel a pull toward them or a quiet warning to keep distance. A glance, a tone, a posture. A split second later, your opinion is already forming. And only after that does your rational mind start looking for reasons. The shock is realizing that your brain made a judgment before you consciously gathered enough information to justify it. This rapid judgment is not laziness or prejudice by default. It is a survival mechanism designed for speed, not fairness. For most of human history, Waiting to collect full information was dangerous. Encounters were brief and often high stakes. Friend or foe, safe or unsafe, dominant or submissive. The brain evolved to extract meaning from minimal data because hesitation could be costly. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for patterns, facial expressions, eye contact, voice pitch, micro movements, clothing condition, energy level. These cues are processed in milliseconds by parts of the brain that operate faster than conscious thought. The amygdala and related networks compare what they see to stored threat patterns and past experiences. By the time you think you are forming an opinion, your body already reacted. This is why first impressions feel instinctive. You feel at ease or tense before you know why. That sensation is the output of rapid threat assessment, not logical analysis. The validating truth is this: if you sometimes judge quickly and then feel guilty about it, that initial judgment does not automatically mean you are shallow or unkind. It means your brain is doing what it evolved to do: reduce uncertainty fast. This system does not aim for accuracy in the modern moral sense. It aims for safety. It would rather be wrong and cautious than right and harmed. That bias toward caution kept humans alive long before social nuance mattered. Rapid judgment is especially strong in unfamiliar environments or situations with unclear power dynamics. New places, new people, crowds, authority figures. When uncertainty rises, speed becomes more important than depth. Your brain chooses quick categorization over careful reasoning. Importantly, this process is not fixed. It updates constantly. First impressions are provisional. As more information arrives, the brain adjusts. But the first judgment often sets the emotional tone. It decides how open or guarded you feel while gathering new data. This is why it can be hard to shake a gut reaction, even when logic disagrees. The reaction came from a deeper layer. Logic speaks later and quieter. Trauma and past experiences heavily influence this system. If certain traits once signaled danger, the brain flags them again. This does not mean the present situation is the same. It means the brain is using memory to predict risk. Again, not fairness. Survival. People often misunderstand this mechanism and try to suppress it completely. But the issue is not that rapid judgment exists. It is what you do with it. The initial signal is information, not a verdict. In ancestral environments, these snap judgments helped people avoid violence, deception, or exclusion. Someone who ignored early warning signs often did not get a second chance. Today, the stakes are usually lower, but the wiring remains. What makes this response uncomfortable is that it challenges the idea of total rational control. You like to believe you assess situations objectively. Rapid judgment reveals that your brain is always working ahead of you, shaping perception before awareness. There is also a social survival layer. Humans evolved in groups where quickly identifying allies and threats mattered. Rapid judgment helped establish hierarchy, trust, and boundaries. Without it, groups became chaotic and unsafe. This does not mean every snap judgment is correct. It means every snap judgment is purposeful. It carries information about perceived risk, familiarity, emotional shutdown during ongoing danger. When danger does not pass quickly, something strange can happen inside you. Emotions start to fade. Fear dulls, panic disappears. Even sadness or anger goes quiet. You are still moving, still functioning, but it feels like everything emotional has been turned down or shut off completely. Later, you might wonder why you did not feel more in the moment, why you felt almost blank while something terrible was happening. The shock is realizing that this emotional shutdown is not you being cold, detached, or broken. It is your brain protecting you from overload. During ongoing danger, your nervous system has a problem to solve. Strong emotions take energy. They fragment attention. They can overwhelm decision-making. In a prolonged threat, the brain often decides that feeling less is safer than feeling everything. So it suppresses emotional output to keep you operational. This is not calm, it is containment. When danger is acute and brief, fear spikes. But when danger is continuous, like abuse, captivity, war zones, disasters, or situations where escape is not immediately possible, the brain shifts strategy. Instead of flooding you with emotion, it limits it. This allows you to focus on survival tasks without being paralyzed by terror or despair. This shutdown is driven by changes in brain chemistry. Stress hormones remain elevated, but emotional processing areas reduce activity. The prefrontal cortex focuses on action and monitoring. The limbic system quiets emotional expression. You stay alert, but emotionally muted. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt emotionally numb or flat during ongoing danger and later judged yourself for it, that response was not a failure to care. It was a survival adaptation. Your brain chose function over feeling. This is why people in prolonged crisis often describe feeling robotic, going through the motions, doing what needs to be done without emotional commentary. That is not dissociation yet. It is emotional triage. Feel later. Survive now. What makes this confusing is that people expect emotions to match circumstances. Danger should feel terrifying. Loss should feel devastating. But survival does not care about emotional correctness. It cares about efficiency. Emotional shutdown also prevents collapse. If grief, fear, or rage fully activated while danger was still present, it could incapacitate you. The brain delays those emotions until there is safety to process them. This is why emotions often return suddenly once danger ends, sometimes all at once. Panic attacks, crying spells, anger, exhaustion. The shutdown lifts and everything that was held back rushes forward. People often think something is wrong when this happens. In reality, it means the system finally believes it is safe enough to feel. This response is especially common when escape options are limited. When you cannot fight or flee, emotional suppression becomes the third option. Endure. Children use this response frequently because they have less control over their environments. But adults do it too, often without realizing it. Workplaces, relationships, chronic illness, long-term stress. The brain does not differentiate well between physical danger and inescapable psychological threat. People sometimes confuse emotional shutdown with strength. Others confuse it with apathy. It is neither. It is resource management, the nervous system conserving energy and attention for survival. Trauma can make this response persist longer than necessary. The brain learns that shutting down kept you alive, so it keeps using the strategy even when danger has passed. That is when numbness can feel stuck. Again, not because the system is broken, but because it learned too well. What is unsettling about this mechanism is how convincing it feels. You might genuinely believe you are unaffected, that nothing touched you. But the absence of fear, increased risk, taking when escape feels impossible. When there is no clear way out, something inside you can flip. Caution fades. Hesitation disappears. You might do things you would normally avoid. Say something risky. Take a dangerous shortcut. Push harder instead of pulling back. From the outside, it can look reckless or irrational. From the inside, it feels almost calm, focused, committed. The shock is realizing that when escape feels impossible, your brain may actually increase risk-taking on purpose. This response is not about thrill-seeking or poor judgment. It is a last resort survival strategy. When the brain calculates that traditional options are gone, fight, flee, or hide are no longer viable, it shifts into a different mode. If safety cannot be preserved through caution, it may be preserved through boldness. For most of human history, being trapped meant death unless something drastic changed. Cornered animals do not behave carefully. They lunge. They charge. They take chances they would never take in open terrain. Humans evolved with the same logic. When escape disappears, risk becomes leverage. Neurologically, this shift happens when the brain's threat systems override long-term planning. The prefrontal cortex, which normally weighs consequences, loses influence. Stress hormones surge. Dopamine can spike in unpredictable ways, increasing motivation and action bias. The brain is no longer optimizing for safety. It is optimizing for possibility. Possibility of escape. Possibility of dominance. Possibility of flipping the situation. The validating truth is this: if you have ever acted more daring, confrontational, or impulsive when you felt trapped, that does not mean you lost control. It means your nervous system recalculated the odds and chose a strategy that once saved lives. This response shows up in many forms. Someone stuck in a dangerous situation may suddenly confront an aggressor. A person in extreme stress may quit a job without a backup plan. A trapped individual may attempt a risky escape rather than waiting. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the survival brain's perspective, waiting equals death. This is especially common when perceived control drops to zero. Humans tolerate stress better when they believe they have options. When options vanish, the brain seeks to create one. Even if it is dangerous, risk becomes movement. Movement feels better than paralysis. Interestingly, this response can feel emotionally numbing or even empowering. Fear reduces. Doubt fades. The brain narrows focus and commits. That clarity is not confidence. It is urgency. People often judge themselves harshly for choices made in these states. Why did I do that? What was I thinking? The honest answer is that you were not thinking in the usual sense. You were surviving. This mechanism also explains why people in desperate situations sometimes take actions they would never endorse logically. Jumping from heights, running through danger, making extreme decisions. The brain is not ignoring consequences. It is choosing the only path that still offers change. There is also a social dimension. When escape is blocked, asserting dominance or unpredictability can sometimes deter threats. A bold move can surprise an aggressor. Risk-taking can disrupt patterns. The brain learned that sometimes being dangerous is safer than being vulnerable. This response is amplified by prolonged entrapment. When someone feels stuck for a long time, emotionally, socially, or physically, risk tolerance slowly rises. The system shifts from preservation to disruption. Something has to give. Modern life creates many situations that feel inescapable without being physically dangerous. Toxic environments, financial pressure, emotional confinement, unconscious scanning of faces for threat cues. You are not staring, but you are looking. Every time you enter a room, pass someone on the street, sit across from a stranger, your eyes flick upward just long enough to register a face. You do not analyze it. You do not comment on it. You barely notice that you noticed. But your body reacts anyway. A slight ease, a subtle tension, a feeling of safe or not safe that arrives without explanation. The shock is realizing that your brain is scanning faces for threat cues constantly, even when you believe you are relaxed. This process happens far below conscious thought. The human brain evolved to read faces as fast as possible because faces carry critical survival information: anger, fear, dominance, submission, illness, intent. Before language, before weapons, before structured societies, faces told you whether you needed to prepare to defend yourself, submit, flee, or approach. So, the brain built a shortcut. Within milliseconds of seeing a face, specialized neural circuits evaluate eye shape, muscle tension, jaw tightness, brow position, gaze direction, and emotional micro-expressions. This information goes straight to threat detection systems before it ever reaches rational analysis. You do not decide to assess danger. Your nervous system does it for you. By the time you think you are forming an impression, your body already adjusted. The validating truth is this: if you sometimes feel uneasy around someone without knowing why, that reaction does not mean you are judgmental or irrational. It means your brain detected something it associates with unpredictability or risk. The signal may be outdated. It may be wrong, but it exists for a reason. This scanning becomes more active in unfamiliar or crowded environments. More unknown faces equals more variables. The brain responds by increasing vigilance. You might feel socially tired without understanding why. That fatigue comes from constant background assessment. This system is especially sensitive to eyes, direct staring, avoidant gaze, rapid scanning. In ancestral settings, eye behavior often preceded aggression. Even today, your brain reacts to it instantly. You feel it before you name it. Importantly, this is not the same as conscious prejudice. This is pattern recognition shaped by experience and evolution. Past danger trains the brain. Trauma sharpens the scanner. If certain facial cues once preceded harm, the brain flags them faster next time, not because it hates, because it remembers. This also explains why some people feel instantly safe around certain faces. Softness, predictable expressions, calm eye movement. These cues signal low threat. Your nervous system relaxes without you choosing to trust. What makes this uncomfortable is that it challenges the idea that you meet people with a blank slate. You do not. Your body votes before your mind speaks. But this system is not fixed. As interaction continues, the brain updates its assessment. Threat can dissolve. Safety can grow. The initial scan sets the tone, not the final verdict. People often try to suppress this instinct entirely, believing it makes them unfair. But suppression is not the answer. Awareness is. The first signal is information, not a command. This mechanism once kept humans alive in close quarters, small groups, limited escape, high stakes. Today, it still runs quietly, even when danger is unlikely. The unsettling realization is that your social experience is shaped long before conversation begins. Comfort, discomfort, trust, distance, all influenced by unconscious facial scanning. And here is the tease that stays with you. If your brain can extract meaning from a face in less than a second, how many of your social reactions feel like personality, but are actually protection? Who you avoid, who you relax around, who you trust too quickly or not at all. You think you are reading people. In truth, your survival brain is reading them first, deciding whether you should stay open or stay alert. Freezing speech during confrontation. It hits the moment you need your voice the most. Someone confronts you, raises their tone, accuses you, pushes you verbally in a way that feels threatening, and suddenly your mind goes blank. Words disappear. Your throat tightens. You know what you want to say, but it will not come out. Seconds stretch. Silence grows heavier. Later, the sentences arrive perfectly, but in the moment you were frozen. The shock is realizing this is not shyness, weakness, or lack of intelligence. It is your survival system overriding speech. When confrontation feels dangerous, your brain makes a fast calculation. Talking is not always safe. Words can escalate conflict. Speech can expose vulnerability. In environments where physical or social harm was possible, saying the wrong thing could provoke violence or exclusion. So the brain evolved a backup plan. When threat rises fast, silence becomes protection. Speech is controlled by higher cognitive regions of the brain. Those regions are slow compared to survival circuits. When the amygdala detects threat, it can temporarily suppress the areas responsible for language. Blood flow shifts away from complex processing and toward systems that manage freezing, vigilance, and damage control. The result is a sudden inability to speak, even though consciousness remains intact. You are not choosing silence. Silence is choosing you. From an evolutionary perspective, freezing speech made sense. Many predators react to movement and sound. Staying still and quiet reduced detection. In human conflict, silence could signal submission, reducing the likelihood of attack. It bought time. It prevented escalation. It kept you alive. The validating truth is this: if your voice has ever disappeared during confrontation, and you later felt ashamed or frustrated, that response does not mean you failed. It means your nervous system believed the situation carried real risk and switched to a defensive strategy. This response is especially common when the confrontation involves authority, unpredictability, or past trauma. A raised voice, an aggressive posture, a power imbalance. Your brain is not reacting to the words alone. It is reacting to tone, body language, and perceived threat. What makes this response so confusing is that internally, you may feel alert, aware, even angry, but externally, you appear frozen. That mismatch creates self-judgment. Why could I not say anything? The answer is simple and uncomfortable. Because speech was deprioritized in favor of safety. This is also why the freeze lifts after the confrontation ends. Once the threat passes, language centers come back online. Suddenly, you can articulate everything you wanted to say. That timing is not coincidence. It is biology. People often misinterpret this response as lack of confidence. But confidence requires safety. When safety is compromised, confidence is irrelevant. Survival takes over. This freezing can also become conditioned. If someone has learned that speaking up leads to punishment, ridicule, or danger, the brain learns quickly. It shuts down speech earlier and more aggressively next time. Not to sabotage you, but to prevent harm. Importantly, this is not the same as choosing silence strategically. This is involuntary. You may want to speak. Your body refuses. That distinction matters. There is also a social survival layer. Humans evolved in hierarchies where challenging the wrong person could be fatal. Freezing speech in the presence of dominance cues was protective. Your nervous system still recognizes those cues even in modern settings, where physical danger is unlikely. What makes this response linger in people is not the freeze itself, but the self-blame afterward. Replaying the moment, judging yourself, imagining how it should have gone. That shame ignores the fact that your body acted to protect you. Over time, repeated speech freezing can erode self-trust. People start to believe they are incapable of standing up for themselves. In reality, their nervous system learned that silence once kept them safe. Healing this response does not start with forcing words out. It starts with restoring a sense of safety. When the body feels safe, speech returns naturally. Regulation comes before articulation. The unsettling realization is that your voice is not always under conscious control. It depends on context. threat can mute it instantly. And here is the tease that matters. If your brain can silence your speech to protect you during confrontation, memory distortion after surviving danger. After you survive something dangerous, your memory of it can feel strangely unreliable. Pieces are missing. The order feels wrong. Some moments are painfully vivid, while others are completely gone. You might remember a tiny detail with crystal clarity, but forget entire chunks that logically should be there. When you try to explain what happened, the story feels slippery, like it keeps changing shape. The shock is realizing that your memory did not fail because of damage or weakness. It changed because your brain chose survival over recording accuracy. During danger, your brain is not acting like a camera. It is acting like a command center. Its primary job is to keep you alive, not to document events in neat chronological order. So when threat spikes, the brain reallocates resources. Systems responsible for detailed memory formation lose priority. Systems responsible for action, vigilance, and reflex take over. This is why memory distortion is so common after surviving danger. The hippocampus, which helps organize memories into time and sequence, becomes less active under extreme stress. Meanwhile, the amygdala becomes highly active, tagging certain moments as emotionally important. The result is fragmented memory, intense snapshots surrounded by blanks. Your brain remembers what mattered most for survival, not what makes the best story later. The validating truth is this: if your memory feels inconsistent or unreliable after danger, and you have questioned your own credibility because of it, that distortion does not mean you are lying or exaggerating. It means your brain was doing its job under extreme conditions. This is why survivors often remember sensory details vividly. Sounds, smells, a facial expression, a flash of movement. These details mattered in the moment. They carried information about threat. Meanwhile, background details, timing, and sequence were less important and often dropped. It is also why memories can change over time. When the brain revisits the event later, it tries to fill gaps. It uses logic, emotion, and outside information to make the memory feel whole. That reconstruction can feel unsettling. You may wonder which version is real. The answer is that memory after danger is not static. It is adaptive. People often expect memory to work like a recording, but memory is a living process, especially under stress. The brain stores what helps future survival, what can be learned, what should be avoided next time. This distortion can feel deeply uncomfortable. You survived something real, yet you cannot fully access it. Others may question your account. You may question yourself. That doubt can be more painful than the danger itself. Trauma can intensify this effect. When danger overwhelms the nervous system, memory fragmentation increases. The brain may intentionally block access to certain moments to prevent emotional overload. Forgetting becomes protection. This is also why memories can return later, unexpectedly. A smell, a sound, a similar situation. The brain releases pieces when it believes you are safer and better equipped to handle them. Importantly, memory distortion does not mean the experience was less real. It often means it was more intense. The brain was too busy keeping you alive to narrate. What makes this especially hard is that modern culture treats memory as proof. If you cannot remember clearly, people assume the event was minor or imagined. Biology says the opposite. The more dangerous the situation, the more likely memory becomes fragmented. The unsettling realization is that your sense of the past is shaped by survival logic, not truth preservation. Your brain edits history in service of keeping you alive now. And here is the tease that lingers. If your memory can bend, blur, or break apart after danger to protect, sensory overload leading to withdrawal. It usually starts quietly. Sounds get sharper. Lights feel harsher. Textures you normally ignore begin to irritate your skin. Conversations overlap and suddenly it feels like everything is happening at once. You might feel the urge to shut down, leave the room, stop responding, or disappear into silence. People around you may think you are being distant or rude, but inside, it feels like too much is pouring in with nowhere to go. The shock is realizing that this withdrawal is not avoidance or weakness. It is your nervous system pulling the emergency brake. When sensory input becomes overwhelming, your brain has to make a fast decision. Continue processing everything and risk overload, or reduce input immediately to preserve function. Withdrawal is not giving up. It is containment. Humans evolved in environments where excessive stimulation often meant danger. Loud noises, rapid movement, crowded activity. These were signs of chaos, threat, or imminent harm. When the brain detected too much incoming information too quickly, it learned to narrow the channel, reduce exposure, get still, pull inward. Sensory overload happens when the brain receives more input than it can organize in real time. Visual stimuli, sounds, smells, touch, emotional cues from others. Under stress, the brain's filtering system weakens. Normally, it blocks out what is not important. In threat or exhaustion, that filter fails. Everything comes through at full volume. At that point, withdrawal becomes the safest option. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt the need to shut down, leave, or isolate when things became overwhelming, that response does not mean you are antisocial or incapable. It means your nervous system was protecting itself from overload. This withdrawal can look many ways: going quiet, avoiding eye contact, leaving early, needing darkness or silence, feeling irritated by small things, wanting to be alone without explanation. These are not character flaws. They are signs that your system reached capacity. Importantly, this response is not about disliking people. It is about reducing input. Even people you love can become overwhelming when your nervous system is flooded. The brain does not differentiate between good stimulation and bad stimulation when it is overloaded. It just knows it needs less. This mechanism is especially strong in prolonged stress. When your baseline is already elevated, your tolerance for sensory input drops. What once felt manageable now feels unbearable. That does not mean you changed. It means your system is working harder. There is also a survival logic to going inward. When danger is diffuse or unclear, the brain reduces outward engagement to conserve energy. Less movement, less communication, less exposure. Withdrawal buys time. It allows the nervous system to stabilize. People often misinterpret this as emotional shutdown or disinterest. But sensory withdrawal is not emotional numbness. You may feel intensely inside. You just cannot process more external input. This response is common after trauma. Trauma sensitizes the nervous system. The threshold for overload lowers. Crowds, noise, bright environments, emotional conversations. All of these can trigger the need to retreat. Again, not because something is wrong, but because the system learned that too much input once preceded harm. What makes this response confusing is that it often appears suddenly. One moment you are fine. The next you need out. That shift happens when the brain crosses a threshold. You do not gradually choose to withdraw. The system flips states. Withdrawal also prevents escalation. If the brain did not pull you inward, overload could lead to panic, aggression, or collapse. Stepping away is the safer option. This is why forcing yourself to stay engaged during overload often backfires. You become irritable, dissociated, exhausted, overreacting to minor threats after trauma. It can feel embarrassing when it happens. A loud noise makes your heart slam. Someone steps too close and your body jolts. A small conflict feels massive. A harmless comment lands like an attack. Logically, you know the situation is minor. Emotionally, your body reacts as if something serious is about to happen. The shock is realizing that this is not you being dramatic or unstable. It is your nervous system treating small signals like big threats on purpose. After trauma, your brain changes how it calculates danger. It is no longer asking, is this objectively serious? It is asking, does this resemble something that once hurt me? And resemblance is enough to trigger a full response. Trauma teaches the brain that danger can appear suddenly and without warning. So the brain adapts by lowering the threshold for alarm. Things that once registered as neutral now get flagged as potentially dangerous. This is not because the brain is confused. It is because it learned that missing early warning signs had consequences. When a minor trigger appears, a sound, a tone of voice, a movement, a situation that vaguely echoes past danger, the amygdala reacts fast. Stress hormones surge. Muscles tense. Heart rate spikes. The thinking brain does not get a vote at first. The body reacts before context is evaluated. From the inside, it feels like an overreaction. From the survival system's perspective, it is a precaution. The validating truth is this. If you have noticed yourself reacting strongly to things that seem small after trauma, that does not mean you are weak or broken. It means your brain rewired itself to keep you safer than before. This response is rooted in pattern recognition. Trauma imprints certain cues deeply. Your nervous system remembers them even when your conscious mind wants to move on. When a current situation shares even a few elements with a past threat, the brain assumes risk. It would rather be wrong and safe than calm and harmed. This is why people often say, I know it is not a big deal, but my body does not agree. That split is real. The body learned something the mind cannot simply override. Overreacting to minor threats is especially common when you feel tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. Your nervous system has less capacity to differentiate between levels of risk. Everything feels closer to the edge. The brain simplifies the question, safe or unsafe. Subtlety disappears. It is also more likely when you feel trapped, unheard, or powerless. Trauma often involved loss of control. When present-day situations echo that feeling, even mildly, the alarm goes off. The brain is not responding to the moment alone. It is responding to memory layered onto the moment. People around you may not understand this. They see the current situation. You are reacting to a composite of past and present. That mismatch can create shame. Why am I like this? Why can everyone else stay calm? The answer is not that others are stronger. It is that your nervous system learned differently. Importantly, this response is not permanent. The brain is plastic. It adapts based on experience, but it will not raise the alarm threshold again until it learns, repeatedly, that early warnings no longer lead to harm. This is why healing takes time and safety, not force. You cannot shame your nervous system into calm. You have to show it over and over that the world is more predictable now. What makes this reaction so exhausting is that it drains energy. Constant alarms keep the body in a state of readiness. Muscles stay tight, sleep suffers, concentration drops. Then even smaller things start triggering bigger reactions. It becomes a loop. People often try to automatic compliance when escape seems unlikely. It happens faster than you expect. Someone pressures you. A situation turns uncomfortable. A demand is made that you do not like, do not agree with, or do not want to fulfill. And before you consciously decide anything, you find yourself nodding, agreeing, going along with it. Later, you replay the moment and ask yourself why you did not resist, why you did not say no, why you complied when every part of you felt wrong afterward. The shock is realizing that this was not cowardice or weakness. It was a survival strategy activating under perceived entrapment. When escape feels unlikely, physically, socially, emotionally, or economically, your brain runs a rapid calculation. Can I leave? Can I fight? Can I safely resist? If the answer feels like no, the nervous system often defaults to compliance. Not because it wants to submit, but because submission can reduce harm. This response is older than logic. In nature, many animals survive by freezing or appeasing when escape is blocked. Showing submission can stop an attack, reduce aggression. By time, humans evolved the same option. When resistance increases risk, compliance becomes the safest move. Neurologically, this happens when threat detection systems override agency. The amygdala flags danger. Stress hormones surge. The brain shifts focus from long-term values to short-term survival. The prefrontal cortex, which helps you weigh choices and assert boundaries, loses influence. The goal narrows to one thing. Get through this without escalating harm. You are not choosing compliance. Your nervous system is choosing de-escalation. The validating truth is this. If you have ever automatically agreed, obeyed, or gone along with something because saying no felt unsafe, that response does not mean you are weak-willed or easily controlled. It means your brain believed resistance would cost more than compliance. This is especially common in situations with power imbalance, authority figures, aggressive personalities, social pressure, financial dependence. When someone else controls consequences, your nervous system becomes cautious. It looks for the path of least immediate danger. What makes this response so confusing is how calm it can feel in the moment. You may not feel panic. You may feel detached, polite, or strangely blank. That calm is not consent. It is shutdown mixed with appeasement. The brain is trying to smooth the interaction to keep you safe. Later, when the threat is gone, emotions rush back. Anger, shame, regret. Why did I let that happen? Those feelings arrive because the thinking brain comes back online and realizes a boundary was crossed. But in the moment, survival took priority over self-expression. This response is often misunderstood, especially by the people experiencing it. They judge themselves harshly. I should have fought back. I should have spoken up. That judgment ignores the fact that your nervous system assessed risk and acted accordingly. Trauma makes this response stronger. If compliance once prevented harm, the brain learns fast. Next time, it activates sooner. Saying yes becomes automatic when no feels dangerous. Again, not because the system is broken, but because it learned from experience. This pattern can show up in many areas. Staying quiet in confrontations, agreeing to unfair demands, enduring uncomfortable situations, letting others decide. On the surface, it looks like passivity. Underneath, it is threat management. Importantly, automatic compliance is not the same as agreement. The body can comply while the self disagrees completely. That internal split is often what makes the aftermath so painful. You survived the moment, but you lost alignment with yourself. There is also a social survival layer here. Humans evolved in hierarchies where challenging the wrong person could mean exile, injury, or death. Compliance preserved access to the group. Your nervous system still recognizes dominance cues and adjusts behavior accordingly. Modern environments still trigger this ancient wiring. Workplaces, relationships, institutions. The brain does not distinguish between a physical threat and a social one when consequences feel severe. Loss of safety is loss of safety. What makes this response hard to break is that it often works. Compliance reduces immediate danger. The nervous system logs that as mental fatigue following prolonged alertness. It does not hit all at once. At first, you are sharp, focused, on edge in a way that feels useful. You are watching everything, listening closely, anticipating problems before they happen. But then, after hours or days of staying alert, something shifts. Your thoughts slow down. Simple decisions feel heavy. Concentration slips through your fingers. You feel drained in a way that sleep alone does not immediately fix. The shock is realizing that this exhaustion is not laziness or lack of discipline. It is the cost of staying in survival mode for too long. Prolonged alertness is not neutral for the brain. When you are constantly scanning for danger, your nervous system stays activated. Stress hormones remain elevated. Attention is held wide and tense. Your brain is working overtime to predict, prevent, and respond. That level of vigilance burns through mental energy fast. Humans did not evolve to stay alert indefinitely. High alertness was meant to be temporary. A hunt, a threat, a crisis. Once resolved, the system powered down. But when danger feels ongoing or unpredictable, the alert state does not shut off. The brain never gets permission to rest. Mental fatigue is what happens when the brain exceeds its sustainable limit. Neurologically, prolonged alertness taxes the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, decision-making, impulse control, and working memory. That region consumes a lot of energy. When it is constantly engaged, without recovery, it starts to underperform. You feel foggy, slower, less capable. Not because you lost ability, but because the system is depleted. The validating truth is this: if you feel mentally exhausted after long periods of vigilance, that does not mean you are weak or unmotivated. It means your brain did exactly what it was designed to do and paid the price for it. This fatigue often follows situations where you had to stay on guard. Caregiving, high-pressure jobs, unsafe environments, emotional conflict, trauma. Even prolonged uncertainty can keep the brain alert. You may not feel scared the whole time, but your system is still monitoring for risk. What makes this exhaustion confusing is that it can appear after the danger ends. You might hold it together during the crisis, then crash afterward. That timing is not accidental. During alertness, adrenaline helps compensate. Once the alert state drops, the true cost shows up. Mental fatigue affects more than focus. Emotional regulation weakens. Small problems feel overwhelming. Patience shrinks. Motivation drops. People often interpret this as personal failure. In reality, it is resource depletion. There is also a physical component. Prolonged alertness keeps muscles slightly tense. Breathing shallow, sleep lighter. Even rest does not fully restore you, because the nervous system does not fully stand down. The brain never feels completely safe enough to recover deeply. This is why mental fatigue can feel different from ordinary tiredness. It is not just sleepiness. It is heaviness, resistance, a sense that thinking itself takes effort. Trauma intensifies this response. Trauma teaches the brain that danger can return at any moment. So vigilance becomes habitual. Even in safe environments, part of the mind stays on watch. That constant background monitoring slowly drains cognitive energy. People often try to push through this fatigue with willpower, more effort, more pressure. But effort uses the same depleted systems. Pushing harder without reducing alertness only deepens the exhaustion. Importantly, mental fatigue is not a signal to quit. It is a signal to downshift. The brain is asking for reduced input, reduced demand, and restored safety. Without that, performance continues to decline. In ancestral environments, prolonged alertness usually meant something was wrong. The group would rotate watch, retreat, seek shelter. Modern life often ignores heightened awareness of body position in danger. It often shows up without warning. Suddenly you are aware of how you are standing, how your weight is distributed, where your hands are, how close your body is to other people or objects. You notice the ground beneath your feet, the distance to exits, the angle of your shoulders. Even the way your spine is aligned feels important. It is not anxiety in the abstract. It is physical awareness turned all the way up. The shock is realizing that this intense body awareness is not overthinking. It is your survival system switching to manual control. When danger is detected, your brain stops treating the body as background information. It brings it into the foreground because movement, balance, and position suddenly matter for survival. Where your body is and how it can move becomes critical data. Under threat, the brain prioritizes proprioception, the internal sense that tells you where your body is in space. This system normally runs quietly in the background. You do not think about how you are standing or how to shift your weight. But in danger, the brain amplifies it. Every movement becomes a potential advantage or risk. This heightened awareness helps you avoid obstacles, maintain balance, and prepare for sudden action. If you need to run, duck, brace, or protect vital areas, your brain wants precise feedback from your muscles and joints. Awareness sharpens so reaction time shortens. The validating truth is this: if you have ever felt hyper-aware of your body during a threatening situation, that does not mean you were tense, paranoid, or disconnected from your mind. It means your nervous system was optimizing your chances of survival. This response is especially strong when danger feels close and immediate. Not theoretical, not distant, close enough that your body might need to move fast. Your brain shifts focus away from abstract thought and into physical readiness. You might notice yourself standing differently, squaring your shoulders, lowering your center of gravity, positioning your body sideways rather than front-facing, keeping your hands free. These are not conscious decisions. They are ancient motor programs activating automatically. Trauma can make this response more sensitive. If your body learned that danger can strike suddenly, it stays more aware of positioning even in mildly stressful situations. You may constantly adjust how you sit, stand, or move without realizing why. Your system learned that position matters. This awareness also extends to how exposed or protected you feel. You might instinctively position yourself near walls, corners, or exits. You may avoid turning your back. You may feel uncomfortable when your movement is restricted. These instincts are about preserving options. Importantly, this is not the same as body anxiety. Anxiety often pulls attention inward in a chaotic way. Survival awareness is focused and practical. It tracks leverage, balance, and escape routes. The mind may be quiet while the body is alert. People often misinterpret this response as hypervigilance or stiffness. But what it really is readiness. Your nervous system is preparing for action without committing to it yet. This response also explains why people sometimes feel physically exhausted after danger passes. Maintaining heightened proprioceptive awareness costs energy. Muscles stay slightly engaged. Posture is controlled. The body is ready to move. When the threat ends, the release can feel like collapse. In ancestral environments, this response was life-saving. A misstep could mean injury. Poor balance could mean death. Being aware of footing, posture, and movement increased survival odds. The brain evolved to amplify bodily awareness precisely when it mattered most. Modern environments still trigger this wiring. A confrontation, a dark space, an unfamiliar setting.